Yo, what's up? Welcome to PS I Love You XOXO episode 97. I'm one of your hosts, Blessing Adeoye Jr. Joining me is Game Onesis, aka Janet Garcia.
Yo, what's good?
Not much, Janet. What's good with you?
I'm here. I just watched Black Widow yesterday, and I'm ready to decide who the ultimate PlayStation character is.
Ooh, how'd you like Black Widow?
It was fun. I liked it. I thought it was actually pretty good. The only gripe I have is light spoilers. There's too many slow motion walking with flames bursting behind you. They did that a little too much. They did it like the first one. I'm like, that's already too much. Then they did it again, and I was like, you're really pushing for it in these last 30 minutes.
Yeah, Black Widow was one that I liked fine. I was bored with just because it felt like such a by the numbers Marvel movie, and like I wanted it to be more Mission Impossible or like James Bondy in terms of the espionage elements of it.
It was also
like
a weird time for it to come out in like the grander scale of like where the MCU is at. Like it felt like it just came a few years too late.
Yeah, like it should have came out after Civil War as opposed to after Endgame, and like in this weird middle spot where we're at with Marvel content. I will say though, I did recently watch in the last week. I watched Eternals, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. I've seen like the mixed reception online for it, and after watching it, I think I understand where that comes from. But I think it was a really good movie, honestly. Like I like that it was different. I like that it was a bit slower and a bit fresh for the MCU.
It felt like an epic.
It felt like an epic, and like there's a lot that happens in it, is what I'll say. Like it felt meaningful to what is happening in the world. And so yeah, I was all about it. Like I admit these movies like Eternals, and I guess Black Widow to some extent, maybe not as big of an extent, but to a little extent, make me excited for where the MCU is going. And Spider-Man No Way Home is around the corner. We're like a month away from that, and I could not be more excited.
Yeah, I was talking about that today because it's in theaters only. So we have to, like, me and my brother have to decide, are we just going to go the first day and have to, like, risk a more packed theater? Or do we wait? We can go on a day it's dead, like, 10 days after in the morning. It'll be pretty empty just because it's in the morning. But then everything will be spoiled. So it's like, which one of these do you want to pick?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
I had the same thing where with Eternals, I was like, man, do I want to watch this the day of? Do I care about spoilers for this? Spider-Man, I care about spoilers for.
But you can tell no one's going to spoil Eternal. It's like no one's spoiling Shang-Chi either, where it's like you'd have to just tell me what happened to spoil it. Like,
yeah, that's the thing is, if I read an Eternal spoiler, I don't think I would have even known that it was an Eternal spoiler. Like I had I think somebody brought up like the post credits for Eternals before I saw it, and I was like, actually, I don't really care that much because like it's Eternals.
Yeah,
right? Like,
it's inconsequential to like what actually happened in Eternals,
Yeah. And so like, Eternals was one where I kind of had to weigh that. And I went, well, I have other plans too. Like I went to see Esther Povitsky, the comedian and actress, live do stand up, which is really fun. And like that's the thing that I was like, cool, if it's between this or watching Eternals on day one, I'm gonna go do this because I can just watch Eternals later. I can't just go see her live later. And so I did that, and then like it took a few weeks for me to get there, but I got there and it was still good. It was still great. Janet, you know what else is great? What we have upcoming for PS I Love You, because we've been talking about the PS Love You housekeeping, right? We have a few hashtag PS We Played This that are in the works. The Horizon Zero Dawn one, which you're playing through it for the first time, and we'll talk about that. That is due in January, and I know you are making progress in that because I've been seeing your updates, and so like you've been out there killing it. I still need to start Frozen Wilds, and so like that is my goal, is to play through Frozen Wilds. But that's still pending. That is due January. But we also had the other hashtag PS We Played This for PlayStation Now. And I'm happy to announce that we are Sifuing this. Sifu last week, they were like, cool, we're moving up our release date to February 8th or whatever. We're getting out the way of all the big dogs. And I did some calendar gazing last week, Janet, and I was trying to figure out what December looks like for PS Love You in terms of quite a few things, episodes we want to do, PS Love You awards, whatever that stuff looks like. Turns out we do not have space in December for a PlayStation Now review. And so we're getting out the way of all of the big December happenings. And the PlayStation Now review is now happening next week. As long as there's not like big PlayStation breaking news that we have that needs to be the headline, that will likely be next week, the PlayStation Now review. And so
pending Last of Us 3 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like if they shadow drop Last of Us Factions or whatever, then it's like, okay, cool, maybe we'll do the PS Now review in January, or we'll make it a segment in terms of like the topic of the show. But for now, that is the goal, is to do the PlayStation Now review next week as opposed to later in December. So like really we're moving it up like a week. But that's to give y'all a chance if people still want to play PlayStation Now stuff alongside with us. Check it out. And to let you guys know where we're at in terms of what that review is. Now, today's PSW is a big one. It's a fun one because we are doing our best PlayStation character bracket, which is going to be the whole episode. We are that's going to be the one segment. It's going to be a giant deep dive in, and I'm excited to dive into it with you, Janet. But before we get there, I want to do a quick mini what you've been playing because Janet, you've been playing Kid A Amnesia, which was announced at a PlayStation State of Play. Or no, I think it was announced at the PlayStation Showcase, actually. It's a big PlayStation drop, and it's one that I have a billion questions about. And I won't pour all my billion questions on you here. But what is Kid A Amnesia, and what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, it's a name that I still can't really read. What, Kid A Amnesia? Because it's combined. Kid A and Amnesiac is the reference point. Its subtitle, the full title is Kid A Amnesia Exhibition. So it is described as an upside down digital/analog universe created from original artwork and recordings to commemorate the coming of age of Radiohead's Kid A and Amnesiac albums. So if you're familiar with Radiohead, specifically these works, you'll recognize a lot of the figures and shadows and lyrics that are there. Essentially what it is, it's a digital museum that you can enter and walk around, and you hear elements of songs, sometimes in some cases full songs, or kind of remixes or certain pieces of songs. There's a couple other fun nuggets there. They're like QR codes on the wall that you can scan. It eventually takes you to like a merch store and other weird things. And it's exclusive to PS5, but it's also on PC via the Epic Game Store, and it's free across both platforms. And yeah, it's this weird thing. People have asked me, like, how long is it? I really couldn't tell you. I played through it once. I think I saw everything, mostly. One of my only gripes about it is it's a little bit, I think it's intentionally made for you to get a little lost. But that being said, I'm not confident that I'm like, is this the end? Was I supposed to see like a credits or so? I didn't, but I think I don't have any more doors to go through. But if you like Radiohead, I think it's kind of a must play. And if you're down for weird art stuff, which I imagine if you like Radiohead, you're down for weird art stuff, because it's super trippy. Like you're kind of, in some moments floating through space, and there's like spikes coming out that go with the music. At one point, you're like, there's this really beautiful part for, I think it's for the song How to Disappear Completely, but I might be botching that a little bit, where it's black and white, and it's almost like think of a really artsy version of an iTunes visualizer from back in the day. It's kind of like that. We're just kind of floating through space, and you can move the camera around, and sort of that can also manipulate the sound a bit. It is headphones recommended, which whenever people recommend headphones to me for like this kind of stuff, I'm like, I'm not gonna put the headphones on. But as soon as I started, I was like, I'm putting the headphones on, and I got pretty into it. Again, it's for the weird art kids. It's for the museum stands, the Radiohead stands. I would say if you haven't listened to Kid A or Amnesiac and you're not familiar with Radiohead, I probably wouldn't recommend you do it, because I don't think it'd be as like mind-blowing and cool. I think it would just be kind of weird and creepy, and it is a little bit scary at certain points. But as someone that is a fan of those albums and that band, I love just like walking through and like hearing the national anthem inside a freaking cube next to a bunch of television screens. I also like love museums. I never mentioned this on here, but I actually worked at a museum for a short time. I was a intern at the family program sector of the Art Institute of Chicago. And then from there, cool. I moved to like a more like part-time role. And in my internship, I also was able to see like other elements of the museum. So I did stuff like looking at like museum restoration, where there's people that have like an art history degree and like a chemistry degree, and they like touch up the paintings. I looked at like, how do you curate a gallery or an exhibit? So I was thinking of those things as I was sort of navigating the space and thinking about like, how effective of a museum space is this? It's a bit mixed, but I think it's a fun experiment. But yeah, that's Radiohead Kid A Amnesia Exhibition.
Oh yeah, that sounds intriguing. I'm not a huge Radiohead person, but I've had it on my dashboard. It is free to play, and so like you can download it and jump into it if you want.
No trophies though, which I think is
no
crazy.
Trophies.
No trophies.
That's usually the standard for like free stuff, but you can, if developers fight for it, I believe they can get around it and get trophies into it. I think platinum is usually the tough thing to fight for, but it doesn't have trophies, period. Which
not that
I've
seen.
Me.
And I think I clicked on the thing too, because usually, I looked like on my trophies if it came up as software played, and it was not there. But I think it's also because they don't consider it to be a game. Like they describe it as like, this is not really a game. But even though we think everyone can like it, it's an experience. So okay. I do wish it was in VR, but I think it also might be too nauseating in VR depending on how you tilt your camera. Yeah, a little bit.
Interesting. One more thing for what you've been playing. Barry, you've been playing some Persona 4 Golden. Do you want to give us an update?
Yeah, like I brought up last week, I restarted it after trying it in January and dropping off after like 7 hours, pretty much like right when I finished the first dungeon. Caught up to there pretty quickly, and now I just started the second dungeon. I think I met the biker boy Kanji, I think is his name.
Hell
I
yeah.
just started his
Hell
dungeon.
yeah.
And like, I'm interested to give an update more so next week because I'm so early on, and I'm very interested of like where they're going with Kanji as a character, and I don't know if I love their interpretation with like where they're going with it.
There's gonna be things about Kanji that you're not gonna love. I'll tell you right now.
And it's not like on paper of like what they're gonna try to do with him, I think is like interesting. It's just in that weird, Japanese developer trying to showcase, people possibly, again, I'm not trying to assume anything yet because I'm still very early on, of like people possibly in the LGBT community. Still, I'm getting some weird vibes right now with like what they're actually doing with his character, but
those will continue.
Yeah,
it's
we'll see.
one of the big struggling points I've had with Persona in both Persona 4 and Persona 5 now, where I think they both stumble in similar places. I think Persona 4 tackles it a little bit more head on than Persona 5 in ways that I think
Persona 5 feels they use it as almost like a shitty like punchline joke, and then they quickly move on from it. Whereas like I can already see like Kanji is going to be a main character. He's going to be a part of my party at some point. So I imagine they're going to at least try to go a little deeper with like what they're going with here. Again, I'm interested to see where it goes. We're about to have like most of the week off, so I'm probably going to be playing a lot this week. So I'm more excited to give more of a significant update next week. But I just want to like, because I'm I finally got the Vita up. I finally am like really deep diving into Persona 4. I wanted to like kind of give updates as I go. And I'm still really enjoying it. I'm getting a little more used to like the old version of like their turn-based systems and all that stuff, and getting more in the headspace of whenever this came out, like 2012, I think is when Golden came out. So finally started my social link with Yukiko this morning as well, so that's exciting. And I'm excited to grow more with all these kids. So that's my quick update.
Oh yeah. Well, without further ado, let's get into talking about our PlayStation best character bracket. But before we get there, I want to remind you that this is PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week, we join you to talk about the biggest topics in PlayStation. If you like that, you can watch it live right here as we record on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, or you can watch it on Tuesday when it posts for everyone on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, Rooster Teeth, and on podcast services around the globe. Remember, you can use Epic Creator Code KindaFunny on all Epic Store and Epic in-game purchases like Rocket League and Fortnite to help support the channel. Housekeeping for you, KindaFunny Xcast is up right now, and in case you missed it, it's the crew talking about their Halo Infinite campaign preview impressions, so look out for that. Go check that out if you have any interest in checking out their Halo Infinite campaign. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Pranksy, Tyler Ross, Delaney Twinning, Julian, the gluten-free gamer, Alex J. Sandoval, James Hastings, and Casey Andrew. Today we're brought to you by ExpressVPN, Purple Mattress, and Upstart, but we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's start with topic of the show. Today's topic of the show is essentially all of the show, right? It's the PlayStation best character bracket. For weeks, I've been asking people to write in with their suggestions. I reached out on Twitter to get people's input on submissions for what characters should be considered and debated for the 64 character bracket that we're doing to determine the best PlayStation character. All right. I tweeted out the bracket a little bit later last week, Friday of last week. But to catch people up who may have missed out on the bracket, the characters look like this. All right. We got Pyramid Head, Clank. Actually, before I even get into this, because I feel like I don't want to end up reading it twice, because I do want to read the matchups off. In fact, Bear's showing it for you here. So I guess I'll do it like this, right? I'm reading it verbatim the way that they're matched up. In the first round, and then we'll talk about the brackets and the making of it and all that stuff. But to jump right into it, right? In the first round, in the circle area, what do they call it in the bracket?
Circle bracket.
Oh, okay, there you go. The circle bracket.
Each of these areas are brackets.
Gotcha. Yeah. In the circle bracket, you have Pyramid Head versus Clank, Hunter from Bloodborne versus Delson Rowe, Heihachi versus Deacon St. John, Sly Cooper versus Lara Croft, Juliana Blake versus Chloe Fraser, Sora versus Trico, Ethan Mars versus Nathan Drake, and then Big Boss versus Toan. In the cross bracket, you have Tifa Lockhart versus Ellie, Kat from Gravity Rush versus Eco, Sweet Tooth versus Cloud, Jack versus Rivet, Gabe Logan versus Miles Morales, Princess Plump versus Sam Porter Bridges, Kratos versus Solid Snake, Raiden versus Crash Bandicoot. Over in the triangle bracket, we have Tony Hawk versus Victor Sullivan, Dante from the Devil May Cry series versus Jin Sakai, Cole McGrath versus Titus, Astrobot versus Prince of All Cosmos, Atreus versus Connor, Jody Holmes versus Nanako from Persona 4, Joel Miller versus Tommy Vercetti, Parappa the Rappa versus Spyro the Dragon. And then lastly, in the square bracket, you have Quill from Moss against Abby Anderson, Nathan Hale versus Sackboy, Peter Parker versus Joker from Persona 5, Wander from Shadow of the Colossus versus Leon S. Kennedy, Aerith versus Aloy, Knack versus Ratchet, Maiden in Black versus Colt Vaughn, and then Daxter versus Celine from Returnal. A few things to point out, right? These are all based on your submissions. And so if you're getting mad at anybody based on what characters are determined here, get mad at yourself, because I was looking directly at the Patreon input form and on the Twitter thread that I reached out for you guys on. These are all characters that were suggested by you, and then there were spaces to fill, and me and Janet tried our best to fill in those spaces with characters that I think would
dig deep.
Yeah, we tried to dug deep a little bit, but I think the thing to note is that when filling in the spaces and when trying to determine what characters made it to the list, because of course we don't want to have 8 different characters from the same franchise, right, on the list. I try to go for well-known, iconic, and notable characters, and so like that I try to reach wide as opposed to reach deep, because like nobody wants to hear us talk about I don't know, Makoto from Persona 5. Persona 5 fans do, and I would love to talk about Makoto, but like, you know, we kind of have to like pick and choose the battles so that we can have good representation across
MP
a
from
bunch
Dreams
of franchises.
did not make it in here, despite
MP from Dreams didn't make it in here.
Despite my submission.
Wait, did you write down MP from Dreams?
No. Actually,
okay.
I think I texted it to you, or I mentioned it at one point. I was like, maybe I'm like, this is too deep.
You must have typed it and then deleted it, because I missed. I like went on it must have been Thursday night that I was trying to finalize the things that made it. I hit you up and I was like, Janet, I need characters. We need like 10 more spaces to fill. Like I need suggestions, and you came in and we had back and forth. That's how characters like the Maiden in Black from Demon Souls, which I didn't think about because I hadn't played through Demon Souls. That's how that made it in there. And so that's one thing to know. Other thing to note is that this is randomized seating, which I know upset a few people, right? I think most people got it, most people understood it, but it is randomized seating, which is why you have some fucking intense first round matchups.
There are some last round matches that are in the first round here, which honestly makes it more fun.
That's my thing, is I think that's more interesting. I think that's more fun. I like the chaos of it.
Well,
and all this is based on opinion.
Someone mentioned this for like in defense of the randomization. If you're number 1, it shouldn't matter who you're going up against. The truth is, some of y'all only got the sauce when you're up against weak characters. So when you go head to head with another good character, now it's like, oh, well, maybe some of our faves get left behind as a result. But that's just part of it.
Exactly. And I think in a perfect world, you know, we would have a panel to decide like what each thing is seated. In a world where, you know, like it was me on a Thursday night after hitting up Janet and like it's after work hours and like it's us at 8 p.m. figuring out like who's on the list, and then me having to go, all right, do I want to take another like couple hours of my time to like figure out where each character lands on the seating? It's like, no, I'm gonna randomize this shit, make it fun, make it interesting, make it chaotic. And so, you know, if you got beef with the bracket, again, blame yourself.
Tweet your beef at Game Over Greggy.
At Game Over Greggy for leaving me in charge of the show. There you go. So without further ado, I mean, Janet, do you have any last words before we get into the bracket?
Nah, it's going to take a long time. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. I guess the thing. I think I'll ask real quick, and it doesn't have to be a long discussion. It could be a very quick thoughts. What makes a PlayStation best character?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked, because people were asking about that in the chat too. Also, real quick shout out to the live chat and people on social and on YouTube and everything. There have been a few of you that have been having this running joke about the PlayStation 5 remote ever since we talked about it. Like PS5 remote best character, PS5 remote game of the year. I see you, I acknowledge you, and it makes me laugh every time. So thank you for your PlayStation 5 remote stands
also,
out there.
On that same note, shout out to the live chat. The live chat will be helping us out to break ties whenever me and Janet have a hard disagreement on any of these matchups. You guys, I will drop a straw poll in chat for you guys to help decide who gets to move on.
I think too, so for best character, to me, it is who is the best character, which means like, I think storyline plays a big role in that. I think the way the growth or lack of growth in the character, how dynamic the character is, I think to a level, the character design, I think you kind of get some, again, it's not really a math thing, but like some points for maybe if you've had your own, like, especially for smaller characters, if you've had your own game, you know, what role you played in the overarching, like, situation. And then, like, I think at the bottom of the thing is, like, you know, who's, I guess, cooler against the other one, like, in terms of strength or something. But that's, like, very, very, like, that's, like, a
with
last
30 minutes of prep
conversation.
time, who's going to win in a fight?
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's kind of how I think of it. Are there any things that I didn't mention that you think kind of weigh into what makes the best character?
I think it's going to mean something different to anybody listening, and even for us here. For me, when I look at the title of this, right, PlayStation's best character. PlayStation's best character. I think for me, that means a character that is representative of the best that PlayStation has to offer, right? Which character means the most to PlayStation? Which character is iconic? Which character has the best like story, arc story narrative? I think there's a lot that goes into it that is going to be very case by case as you go through this bracket. And also another thing I wanted to mention, right? Based on how certain characters were included or not. Again, based on your submission, but also I try to offer characters that have any sort of connection to PlayStation whatsoever, whether it is an exclusive game or like a meaningful title to PlayStation in some regards. You associate this franchise or you associate this character with PlayStation, right? Because like even Tommy Vercetti from Vice City, I believe was a PlayStation exclusive game, PS2 exclusive game when that came out, right? Like that is the level of connection. That is a level of connection that I'm considering when it comes to
like a Tomb Raider technically not an exclusive and hasn't been for a long time, but those Tomb Raider games on the PlayStation 1, right?
Yeah,
like
were
that's
exclusive
a very
and
iconic PlayStation thing.
You know, super iconic. And so that is what I'm looking for, you know, like, and even like there's a lot of platformer characters on here. There's a lot of characters that like are more about, I think, the moment than their narrative. And I weigh that too, right? Like I think, you know, how much does Spyro mean to the PlayStation? For me, Spyro means everything to PlayStation 1, right? Like those factor into my arguments as well. And so that's where I'm coming from. I guess let's get into it. Janet, I'm going to ask you, right? We got circle, we got cross, we got triangle, we got square. Where do you want to start off?
Circle.
All right, let's start off with circle.
That's how I read the bracket left.
That is
top.
The top left of the bracket. The first matchup is Pyramid Head versus Clank.
Are we just going for it now? We're just gonna start swinging. Well, what's your? I think have a more Silent Hill background than I do. So
no,
like,
I don't.
Can you really?
Yeah, I have a PT background. I've not played a Silent Hill.
I have barely played a little bit of Silent Hill on PlayStation Now, like a few days ago. I don't know, Barry, if you have any Silent Hill insights to toss in here.
None whatsoever.
That's hilarious. Oh my god, what a rough start. I mean, is it then Clank by default? I mean, Clank's awesome in general. I just would like to give Pyramid Head a shot, you know what I mean?
I mean, 3 out of 3 of us here probably love Clank, right? I know I love Clank. Barry, do you love Clank?
I love
Janet, do you love Clank?
But to give an actual conversation around Pyramid Head, right? I don't play horror games. They're too scary. Like scary stuff when you have to interact with it. Too much for me. But I will say Pyramid Head, very much like an iconic figure. I would say, especially in the early PlayStation days. I don't really know how much of like an actual character they are because I think they're like an enemy or something, right? Again, I'm talking out of my ass here. But I would like when I see Pyramid Head, I do think of like those classic PlayStation days. On the other side, though, to talk about the boy that we're all gonna probably choose here. Clank, such an adorable, fun character. You know, the relationships that he builds, how smart he is as well. Just a all around good boy here. So that's what I got.
I think y'all are.
Yeah, I think Clank's the easy win then.
I was gonna say y'all are already thinking too hard about it. The answer is Clank and it's easy. Like, come on, bro. PlayStation's best character. It's Clank. Clank is better than Pyramid Head.
All right.
Boom. Easy.
Keep moving.
Easy. Next up, we got Hunter from Bloodborne versus Delson Rowe.
I feel like it's going to be Hunter from Bloodborne. I mean, Bloodborne is like one of the most iconic PlayStation things, period. Like, the end.
The argument that I'm going to throw out, and it's going to be for Hunter as well, is that I think Delson Rowe is a cool character, fun character. Shout out Troy Baker. I think bodied it as that character. I don't think Delson Rowe is even the best Infamous character though, right? Like when we think Infamous, we're thinking of Cole, right? We're thinking of Cole McGrath. And like even if we're talking about PS4 Infamous, I'll go ahead and say it. Fetch is more of a character that I care about than Delson Rowe, right? Like I don't think there was much that really stood out to me in terms of his character. And so my pick is Hunter from Bloodborne, just for the iconic status of it, right? Like Hunter doesn't have any dialogue. Hunter barely a character, but I think as an avatar to the world, what's it called? Style Souls, something along those lines. Like Hunter from Bloodborne, I think has that cool thing of the customization there being fun enough and cool enough and rewarding enough to where there is an identity that you build with that character. I think that is what would take Hunter above for me.
Yeah, I think the icon, the Hunter being so iconic, I think overtakes of just like any personality Delson has. Sorry, Jana, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say the same thing where like what y'all are speaking to as far as like Delson maybe not really being standout. Like I know some people in the chat are saying, well, I mean, Hunter doesn't even have a personality. They're just there. It's like, and yet if Hunter was against someone that had more of like a rounded personality or persona, then sure, I think that would be more of a conversation. But I think this is more of in addition to the strengths that Hunter has as like being iconic, I think it's more of an indictment on Delson's personality, which just kind of is what it is. But that's where we're at with the matchup. So I think, yeah, Hunter's the easy win here.
I like the video superpowers that you had in Infamous Second Son. I thought those were cool, but nothing about the character really like stood out to me. Is like, oh man, this guy is the shit. I liked it being Troy Baker. I like Troy Baker's performance of it. Next matchup, Heihachi versus Deacon St. John. Jen, I want to hear you go because you've actually played. You played more Days Gone.
Yeah, I'm out here. I can't believe y'all got me out here fighting for Deacon St. John. What a world that we're in. I don't know how I feel about this timeline, but I will say of Days Gone, mixed bag of a game. Very much just okay. A lot of potential, not exactly a lot of execution, but some cool ideas there. I think one of the things that is an appeal point for Days Gone is a little bit of like, the story and those characters. While Deacon is very archetypal and very tropey, I think part of the fun of that game is finding out his arc, what's going on with like his goals. I don't want to spoil too much stuff. And as well, like his relationship with like Boozer and all that. Like, I feel like Deacon St. John, also such an iconic name, right? Like everyone always talks about this in terms of Days Gone. More so than I think even the hordes are people talking about Deacon and Boozer and like riding your motorcycle and going to the encampments and like what that means. So, I mean, I think Deacon is kind of iconic in a sense. And I think it was a big conversation point. And the ongoing discussion of that studio and the lack of future that franchise has and what that means and people being disappointed and people wanting a Days Gone 2. I mean, I think there's a reason people wanted a Days Gone 2. And part of that is the characters to a degree, even though they are very tropey characters, definitely, not like the strongest thing in this whole thing. But if we're just speaking about the specific bracket, yeah, Deacon's a very fun character.
My pick is Heihachi. I think Heihachi is way more iconic to PlayStation and just more, I think, notable of a character. Heihachi has like a pretty iconic story to him in terms of his connections to Jin and Kazuya and like that lineage, and like the imagery of Heihachi throwing characters into volcanoes is forever burned into my brain. Is something that like is iconically Tekken and iconically something that has big legacy on PlayStation, right? I think there's something to that, and there's also something to even Heihachi being the character that was in Soul Calibur 2 to represent like the PlayStation side of things. Because you remember Soul Calibur 2 at release of that, right? Each console had their own exclusive character. It was Link for GameCube, it was Spawn for Xbox, and PlayStation got Heihachi, right? I think with that and with like just Tekken and Tekken Tag in general, there is a general PlayStation lineage there, even though it's been lost in recent entries now that Tekken is way more cross-platform than it was in the past. And yeah, like Deacon St. John, in the few hours that I spent in Days Gone, I couldn't grow. I couldn't grow to enjoy in those first few hours. I think that's one of the main reasons for me I fell off of playing Days Gone super quick, is like from the get-go, I was just like, there's nothing about this character that's really pulling me in. Like when I think of that, like, I don't know, gritty zombie world character that is fleshed out, that has depth to him, that like, is like willing to be violent, willing to do the things that he needs to do for the people he loves. I think Joel Miller from The Last of Us.
Like those are totally different games. I think like, and again, Deacon St. John, not like the greatest character ever written, but I feel like, man, I think Hachi has more history, so there's that in favor. And like Deacon, it's kind of a flash in the pan, right? Like he's here, he's not coming back from what we, unless they do something weird where, it's not Days Gone, but it's like in this universe or something. Like there's a very, very slim chance that we see Deacon again. And I think that's probably the biggest point against him. But I feel like, I don't know. I feel like more people would recognize Deacon though as a character.
Oh, I disagree.
Potentially.
I and this is the thing where I don't care about really either of these games. I recognize the name Deacon St. John more, but then looking at both of them, I feel like visually, I think more people would be able to pick out Heihachi and be like, oh yeah, I recognize that dude.
And it's a tough thing because Heihachi's been around longer, right? Like Heihachi, Tekken has been out for decades at this point, whereas Days Gone is the first game in that franchise and that only came out a few years ago. And
first,
so in terms
like
of
grand opening, grand closing.
Yeah, like in terms of like the recognizability, I'm making up words here, of the characters, I think it's easier for Heihachi in that regard. But I think that does factor into the arguments that we're making. I think the thing that brings down Deacon for me as well is, I think maybe this is a hot take, maybe it's not a hot take. I don't know. It's my opinion though. Like in terms of why Deacon is iconic or recognizable in PlayStation is purely because he's from a PlayStation first party game. But like when I put him up against any of the other PlayStation first party games from that generation, we're not putting him above Aloy. We're not putting him above Jitsukai. We're not putting him above.
The name carries it. Deacon St. John. It's such an iconic name. Like it's so good. I'm never gonna forget that name. I don't think.
I've dropped the straw poll in the chat. People are voting right now. Right now, Heihachi is winning, and I'm gonna I'll give you guys like 30 seconds to get your votes in.
Again, I'm not so in love with Deacon that I need him to get very far in this bracket, but I fuck with Deacon to an extent. Like that was part of like the conversations that I had, and the strongest memories I have of that game are talking about our Deacon and Boozer talking on the radio, and that whole kind of inner storyline over the larger overarching kind of conflict, and I don't want to say mystery, but kind of finding out what's going on.
So it looks like with the majority vote, it is 75% Heihachi to let's shift it just a little bit. 72.22% Heihachi to 27.78% Deacon St. John. So it looks like Heihachi does move on. Next matchup, Sly Cooper versus Lara Croft.
This one's tough because I feel like Laura's got like way more dynamics going for her, but also Sly is a one-note character, but he plays that note so well. Like Sly Cooper is such a fun, personable, slick character, and I think also this is weird because this is kind of like, I think, veering from the conversation of just like character to character, but I think the storyline of Sly Cooper, like again, I'm kind of early in the games, like the cast that he has with them of people, like his supporting cast helps, I think, highlight his strengths as a character and his personality. And yeah, like he's just fun to play. So I think I could go either way on this one. They're both great characters. Again, Sly is more one note, but I really like that note. So that's my argument for Sly Cooper.
This is a tough one for me. Because like when it comes to Tomb Raider, my touchstone for Tomb Raider are the more recent Tomb Raider games, which are less PlayStation adjacent, right? When you think of Tomb Raider and the reason why Lara Croft is on this bracket, you're thinking of PS1 in the classic Tomb Raider games.
Those old graphics kill me.
You're thinking of like the old, like, oh my god, like JPEG texture face and like the like this is a screenshot to bring up here. This one right here, yeah, like
you're thinking very blocky.
Very blocky, I think is the word for it. And like I think that maintains a lot of legacy and a lot of memories for people. When it comes to the PS1, I would say that Tomb Raider is somewhat synonymous with the PS1 in ways that like I think you could make the argument that Sly Cooper as well is iconic for the PS2 era of PlayStation. But if I had to argue icon status of it, I think I would say that the Tomb Raider is more iconically PlayStation than Sly Cooper. That said, like in terms of the characters themselves and the stories around those characters, I've never fallen in love with the character of Lara Croft, right? Like that was never something that built a connection strongly with me. The reason why I even love the more recent Tomb Raider games are more so for the gameplay and the exploration and the action of it. Like that is why I love those games. And they went above and beyond what Tomb Raider used to be with the recent games. It did add more character and did add more story, but that stuff was just was not stuff that I ever really thought about too deeply. I was just there for the action. Sly Cooper is one that I have way less history with. I think you have more history with Sly Cooper than me. And so like I'm inclined, if you fought strongly for Sly Cooper, I would be inclined to side with you. But off the bat, I am like Lara Croft is probably my go-to pick.
I think this is can we use the poll whenever we're like split, or should we like not use it like so often?
No, we can use whenever we're split.
I think let's poll the audience, because it could really go either way. And I think like as you're kind of drafting up that poll, I'll give like more of my thoughts on these two characters. I think the thing is, Laura's like has far more impact in video games, video game history, and then when you add in, I think that early history to PlayStation, it kind of becomes like a like lethal combination where like Laura can kind of take down almost anybody in that sense. Other than people that have like really, really interesting story arcs, because again, I'm not like totally married to like the adventures of like Lara Croft, but Sly Cooper, there's also a lot of love there. And just because there's not as many games, so the impact is not as substantial, but Sly is consistently a character that people are clamoring for.
Yeah.
Like, and it is in part like the personality and the adventures that Sly Cooper goes on, and like the mix and the blend of those is, increasingly unique as platformers have kind of fallen off in terms of genre popularity. Everyone's always asking remakes, remasters, playing it on PS Now. Like, it's always in the conversation. So much so that in Ghost of Tsushima, there is a nod to that game. And obviously you could argue that that's the development situation, and that of course you're going to nod to your own games. But like, yes. But like, I think part of that is because of the love that people have for that character. And, even playing Sly Cooper now in the modern era, it's so fun seeing some of like that mechanical DNA travel through all the way up into something that we're still feeling in Ghost of Tsushima. And I think part of Sly's character is his tool set. And his tool set is so fun and personable. And I think it ties together in such a good way. And it's so hard to have like a strong character that's in a platformer. Like, mascot platformers came and went, and we got a million of them. They're a dime a dozen. But of those, Sly stands out. And I think that speaks to the strength of Sly Cooper's character. So now I'm kind of leaning on Sly Cooper a little bit.
Yeah,
but I'm still
I was going to say, it's like,
yeah,
he's one note, but he's got a personality, and he's got a team that you constantly feel like him as a character, where it's like, thinking of Lara, like, I don't really, like Blessing was saying, like, she felt like more like an avatar for yourself, especially in like I did play a good chunk of those PS1 games back in the day, and yeah, and even like the more modern ones, like I don't really think of her as like a character, even though they like delve deep into like what her motivations are and like all of this stuff. Like it, yeah, like I would lean more towards Sly here, but I feel like we might be in the minority compared to the chat here.
Yeah, I think the more I think about, the more I sit with it and think about it, I think the more I do lean Lara Croft, and I think that is based on Lara Croft being there from the beginning of PlayStation, right? Like, I think there's something about being tied to like the launch of PlayStation and being there from the get-go. I do think Tomb Raider for a lot of people was a revelation in terms of, oh shit, like this is what this shit can be. And you go back to it now and it's quaint, right? You try to play the old Tomb Raider games and it's like, oh, this shit controls like shit. Like, I remember I had a demo disc, a PlayStation Underground demo disc of the one of the old Tomb Raider games. It must have been like the first or second one. And I used to play that demo over and over again. As a kid who grew up with an N64 and then got the PS2 and had that PS1 demo disc, to just go back and see and like to see that and go, oh, this is different from what I was getting on the N64. Like, this is like a different type of game. I'm swinging from shit. I got my two guns in my hand and like I'm discovering shit. Like, it was Uncharted before Uncharted, right? And like Uncharted, one of PlayStation's most iconic franchises now, I think is only here because of the influence of Tomb Raider and what that is. But I do think I do like the arguments that y'all both have brought up in terms of just like the clamoring of Sly Cooper, right? Like, people want Sly Cooper back. When you ask people what PlayStation franchise, what PlayStation platformer should make a comeback, so many people are saying Sly Cooper. It looks like the votes are in, and it's a close one. 57.14% of the vote to 42.86% of the vote, and the winner is Lara Croft. Lara Croft moves on. The next matchup we have here is Juliana Blake versus Chloe Frazier. And I think this could be a quick one, depending on where Janet's at.
I mean, I know where people want me to be, but I'm on Juliana Blake, to be honest. And I know she's not going to win because Chloe has like more of her own game essentially. So it's like that's kind of an easy win there because you get to parse out that character way more. But I think Juliana's role in Deathloop for being like not the main character is so substantial. I think the voice acting was like off the charts. I think the invasion mechanic is so fun. Like, and we've seen it in like other games too. It's like it's completely new to Deathloop, but I think it was the way that married in with the story, I think is really part of the genius of that game. You don't have that genius without Juliana. I think the back and forth between her and Cole, like without her, Colt or whatever, Colt Vaughn, like without her, like that main character wouldn't have come to life. Like she is low key carrying that story on her back. Now, granted, the end of the story didn't really totally parse out, to be honest, but generally, I think the world building is the strength of Deathloop. Not so much the plot, but the world building, where you are and the mystery that you're set up with and having this goal and having this sort of one of the most likable antagonists ever. Like Juliana Blake, yeah, fantastic out the gate. I'm going Juliana.
Yeah, my pick is for sure Chloe from Uncharted.
Yeah.
Right?
How dare you?
I mean that is
best girl.
It's kind of a cheat code to some extent because I think Deathloop is so new, and Deathloop also has the thing of being a Bethesda game, and like, you know, Deathloop long term isn't going to be associated with PlayStation, even though for now we have the PlayStation Association. And like Juliana hasn't had the time for me yet to like look at that character and go, you're PlayStation's best character. When I look at Chloe Fraser, I am like, oh, you are a fantastic PlayStation character. You're a character that not only do I identify with this system, but in terms of the characterization and the writing of Chloe, I do think there's a lot of fantastic stuff there. And like, I know like you've been working your way through all the Uncharteds, and for the Uncharteds that you have played, I don't think Chloe has shined as much outside of being the cool, like the other thief that's not Nathan Drake, but like is just as cool as Nathan Drake, if not way cooler.
I will say I did like Chloe out the gate, but I'm like, someone's got to fight for Juliana. It ain't gonna be anyone else in the call, so I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah, but then also like in Uncharted Lost Legacy, I think they do elevate that character to the next level, given
like
her main character
what her
status.
motivations are, and like her relationships with other people in that world, like makes like her journey a little more interesting. And like on the other side with like Juliana, I think, and this is we were talking about Deathloop over the weekend, and Arcane, I don't think their strong suit is ever story, but it is world building. It is like just like what happened here and like what's going on in this area that I'm exploring, kind of stuff, where it's like full on story. Like, yeah, I don't think they've really hit the mark fully yet. And with both Juliana and Colt, I think they are both characters who, if they were both isolated, if it was just one or the other, I don't think they'd be nearly as interesting. I think it's their relationship specifically that elevates them both. But as like characters on their own, I don't think are quite as interesting.
Yeah, and I will say, to go back to Chloe for a second, right? Chloe, as an Uncharted protagonist in her own game, built an appreciation for me that I couldn't build for Nathan Drake. I like Nathan Drake for the quips and the comedy and the funness of it, but I never appreciated Nathan Drake on a deeper level. Chloe Fraser as a character in Uncharted Lost Legacy.
I wish less.
Yeah, we're almost there.
We're almost there with Chloe Drake.
But her as a character in Uncharted Lost Legacy, I think they really did a good job. And like they did this with Nathan Drake in Uncharted 4 too, so I don't want to remove that as well. But in Lost Legacy, they built her journey and the treasure they're chasing after around her character and like where she is from and like her identity, and a lot of what they did there made me really like and adore the character on a way deeper level. And so like on a character level, I really love Chloe as well. And it looks like the chat agrees with me because Chloe has won with about 80% of the vote. So Chloe moves on. Next matchup, Chloe Fraser, or sorry, not Chloe Fraser, I misread that. Sora versus Trico. Trico, of course, from The Last Guardian. Sora,
of
course, from Kingdom Hearts.
I think it's Sora. The end. The fact that here's a fact: you read Sora and Trico, and you got to say who Trico is. You ain't got to say none about Sora. Sora speaks for
because there's so many
Sora.
Tricos out there. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Yeah, there's the Pokemon. He's named Trico.
I think we all know that we need to save some time on this, and I think this is a great place.
I know. I'm gonna save time. I just need to get my shit off real quick because Trico is my boy. Trico is the reason why I love The Last Guardian so much. I adore this game, but two, Trico is a fucking fantastic creature. He's the most impressive thing about that game. Like his connection to the main character, the way he moves, the way he's animated, the technical aspects of it, fucking fantastic. But the answer is Sora. Like I can't front. I can't sit here and act like Sora isn't gonna move on here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Next matchup. Speaking of saving some time, Ethan Mars versus Nathan Drake. Say it all with me. 3, 2, 1.
Ethan Mars.
Nathan Drake.
Oh.
Nathan Drake moves on.
You're not serious though, right?
No, I don't. Like, who's Ethan? That's
Heavy Rain.
Heavy Rain. Yeah.
Heavy Rain. Yeah.
The most I remember him is go. Did you guys Jason?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember, and this long enough now. You guys don't give a fuck about Heavy Rain spoilers. The thing I remember the most
I
about
didn't play
Ethan
Heavy
Mars.
Rain.
You should play it just for the shits and giggles. I really like Heavy Rain, but also
I've never
it
played
doesn't age
Heavy
well.
Rain, but I just I got some thoughts already. But the only thing I know is the Jason thing, so I just always yell Jason, like that's all I know. And that and the I watched a video on YouTube of someone failing all the QuickTime events during one of the chase sequences, and it's like one of the funniest things I've seen on the internet. So yeah, that's my Heavy Rain history.
Yeah, the thing I remember the most about Ethan Mars specifically is there's a scene in there again, and I'm gonna spoil it for you, but it's not in 2021. This isn't gonna hit in like a way that it hit for me in 2010. There's a scene in there where like you had to like cut off your own finger to like save your son or some shit. I think that's the context of it. And so like you're doing QuickTime events to essentially cut off your finger. And I remember like as a young man playing that game in 2010 or whatever.
It changed me.
I was like, this is writing right here. This is video games. Oh my god, he had to cut off his own finger.
And you're like, whoa.
Our games art. But yeah, no, like looking back, I'm like, okay, that it wasn't.
I don't get it because they made me do it. So how can it be good? Anyway, that's a conversation for later in the bracket.
Oh yeah, that's a different conversation. I still do think that there are things that I like about Heavy Rain in terms of like UI and shit. But Nathan Drake moves on in that matchup, and then the last matchup of the circle bracket is Big Boss versus Toin from Dark Cloud, and you can say it with me: 3, 2, 1.
Toin.
It's
Big
Toin.
Boss.
Oh yeah, yeah, bless.
I'm just kidding. I'm Big Boss moves on. Big Boss moves on.
Why are we doing this? Like,
Big Boss moves on. I didn't even include Toin for myself. I included Toin for the submissions. There were a few people that did submit Toin, and so I had to get that character.
They're following your influence, and you
Yeah.
know that to be true. Like, let's not pretend.
Let's move on to the cross section of the bracket because I feel like this is the natural progression here.
do a quick recap of who made it in the first round of the circle bracket. I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do a quick recap. Right. Right now, and Barry, I don't know if you have the graphic to bring. Oh, yeah, man, you already got it.
Don't worry.
You're on it. You're on it. In the first circle bracket, right. Moving on to the next round, we have Clank versus Hunter. Actually, I won't even say the versus. I'll just say the characters. You have Clank, Hunter from Bloodborne, Heihachi, Lara Croft, Chloe Fraser, Sora, Nathan Drake, and Big Boss.
That's a squad.
That is a squad. That is looking way better than the first round there. And so, speaking of what are going to be some bigger matchups, let's get into the cross section. Let's start off at the top. God. Okay, I'll just take them one by one. Tifa Lockhart versus Ellie.
Oh, we're like just going?
We're just going. Yeah.
Okay, Ellie.
It hurts.
Do I have to go on? Like, I mean,
it hurts me to say.
I feel like
it hurts me to say. But it's got to be Ellie.
Yeah,
it's Ellie. It's not even a question. You
it
know,
hurts me to say though.
And I know we're going through some of these fast for people where it's not as much of a conversation, but I think we'll have a much deeper conversation just like later in. So I don't want to spend 7 minutes talking about why I think Ellie is a great character when we'll probably do that considering the advancements, Yeah.
Well, I think the thing though is to talk about Tifa, right? Because like Tifa is a character that if Tifa was in the first bracket, was in the previous bracket that we just went through, Tifa probably would have went on to the second round versus a lot of these characters, right? Tifa
could take Deacon St. John, and some of these other people, 100%.
But this is just like an unfortunate.
If it was Tifa Trico, Tifa would just be walking on through. But Tifa's fantastic. But
this is unfortunate seeding. And when you're talking about some of the most iconic PlayStation games, you are talking about Final Fantasy VII, and you are talking about The Last of Us, right? Like both of those, like 7 specifically and 7 Remake and The Last of Us Part 2, right? You're bringing both of those into the conversation of most iconic PlayStation games. And there's an argument that Final Fantasy VII, like in general, is the most iconic PlayStation game, right? Like there is an argument there for that. But in terms of characters, I think there is an importance to Ellie, and like Ellie has an advantage of being a main character in Last of Us Part 2, and like there's a lot we can get into in terms of character depth and writing and like shit like that supports Ellie a lot. But yeah, like I don't. It sucks that Tifa is going in the first round like this. But hey, if she had to lose to anybody,
It has to happen.
Ellie is a great person to lose to in a PlayStation bracket, and so Ellie moves on. Next matchup we have here is Kat from Gravity Rush versus Eco.
This one's. I really don't have much of a background with either of these, so I don't have too much of a horse in this race. Bless, what do you think?
I mean, I think the winner here is going to be Eco, and I included Kat for the Gravity Rush fans out there. I'm sure Gravity Rush fans are like, "Hey, we're happy to be on the bracket period, right?" Like, Kat is the character. Kat's not a character you think about, right? And granted, like, I'm not saying Eco is either, but I think
Kat does have a really iconic design.
I mean, yeah, Kat looks cool.
But yeah, like Kat looks cool, but
like Eco is Eco. Come on, guys, like. Eco was revolutionary.
I can think of the person on the cover of Gravity Rush quicker than I can think of Eco. I'm gonna be honest.
I technically can as well, to be honest. But
like, do you guys want to give the Eco argument? Or sorry, do you guys want to give the Gravity Rush argument?
I don't think I could confidently say I've ever seen this child.
I feel like I've never seen this person before in my life.
You've never seen Eco?
No.
I feel like I know the game. Like, I think the game is iconic, but is the character iconic? Like, is the character dope? I feel like, I don't know.
Like,
you have more relationship with this game.
Are they really doing anything more than the character that you play as in...
Are they just moving?
Shadow of the Colossus, Are you just moving them around?
I mean, do you want spoilers? Do you want spoilers?
Yeah, because I'm not going to play that game because I don't think it's good. So it's like, it's fine. Like, I don't
even know if this is spoilers or theories, but essentially I believe it is that the...
This bracket's all about Blessing spoiling all of the PlayStation games.
The old PlayStation games that people don't care about anymore. I believe Eco is the character. Either is the character or like, somehow is the offspring of the character from Shadow Colossus. Because like if you guys have both finished Shadow Colossus, right?
Yes. Ooh, no, I only got partway through, but I don't care.
I won't get into it. Essentially, in the way the game ends, I think there's an implication that like Eco
there's a baby with a horn on its head or some shit like that. Eventually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so like there's the theory that like that is what ends up being Eco, and I think it is less so.
Is it low key Cat? Should we have people vote? I feel like I don't know.
Are you guys standing by Cat or Jenna? I guess are you standing by Cat as your pick?
A little bit.
As somebody who hasn't played Gravity Rush, even though I played.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I would not. I would not really feel. I don't feel comfortable like picking one or the other, given my history on these two specifically. But I just feel like in terms of like the character, I have a stronger familiarity with Cat, despite having not played that game and having played the other. Like I just think I think there's a conversation to be had. I unfortunately don't have like really big takes on it though.
I think Greg has played Gravity Rush, and I bet if Greg was here he would go Cat, but Greg's not here, and so like who cares?
Straw pull it.
I'll straw pull it.
I think just leave it to the community because I feel like I'm seeing people in chat really like pick one way or the other, and
but this ain't about chat though. Jan, this is about you and me. This is about you and me right here.
Don't have shit to say on it, so it's like,
I got shit. I have plenty of shit to say about Eco.
Good character though. Is he a good character?
Yeah, he's a great character. I think. Here's my thing. And my argument for Eco is that in the ways that Shadow Colossus and Eco specifically, I guess I'll talk about since that was the first game. I think Eco was revolutionary as a game for how it went about being a puzzle game and how it went about its narrative and like I guess its characters, right? Like the characters don't talk. In fact, when the characters do talk, they talk in a language that is completely foreign, and it is supposed to be like the idea of it is it's supposed to be less about like the what are they saying, and it's supposed to be more hinged on like emotion and like essentially like being in the moment with these characters as opposed to like actual plot. Like Eco, I think did a lot in terms of establishing a lot what you would get from Shadow Colossus, and then eventually get with things like Journey as well, where it's about the journey, right? Like no pun intended. It is about like the relationship between Eco and the princess that you are guiding, because the whole thing is that like you find yourself in this like guarded village area, and you're trying to lead this princess out because both of you guys are essentially in trouble by being in here. And so the mechanic is you grab the princess's hand and like you're essentially guiding her to like the next parts of the map while solving puzzles and getting rid of these shadow demons that come at you. And like they build the characters' relationship without like dialogue whatsoever, and I think they do a wonderful job of it in ways again that would go on to influence things like Journey in terms of, hey, we're getting meaning and impact and emotion here that is outside of just like dialogue or talking or whatever, right? It is show not tell. That's my argument for Eco.
Chat says, but okay, you can change the gravity in Gravity Rush though. And I feel like that's
Also,
a really compelling argument.
Remember, chat only comes through.
Cat was in PlayStation All Stars as well. This is via DLC, I think, but.
Well, yeah, well, Cat's like a modern, like Cat came on later. Like Cat was Gravity Rush is like a first party PlayStation thing. I believe it was like the Vita.
Ico's the worst of these 3 games. Okay,
it's a big Vita game.
Games though, it's the character, and I don't know.
That was my argument for the character, right? My argument is that I think they did a great job of building a character. I'm not saying Eco is the greatest character of all time by any means. I am saying that in a matchup between Eco and Cat from Gravity Rush, all I'm saying is that I'm going Eco. And again, this ain't about chat until it gets to chat. It's about me and you, Janet. It's about me and you.
I mean, I feel like you feel passionately about it, so I don't have like a strong feeling against necessarily. I had questions. You gave answers. I don't know if they're sufficient answers, but you did provide answers. So I'm not married to it either way. So I feel like I'm okay deferring to you.
All right, we're going Eco then. We're going Eco in that case. I know the Gravity Rush fans.
And people can just be mad at Blessing.
Gravity Rush fans, punch in air and for sure come at me.
They were really only fighting for this round because the next round isn't going to matter because either way they would have been facing Ellie.
Come on now.
If you got complaints,
get murked either way.
Tweet at me at Twitter at GameOverGreggy. Next matchup is Sweet Tooth versus Cloud.
It's Cloud. It's not even close.
It is Cloud. Like for the
Sweet Tooth has a great design, and I love like Twisted Metal, but like.
This is one of the things I was going to bring up during a conversation about Tifa is that, like, listen, there are other Final Fantasy VII characters on this bracket, and, like, Cloud and Aerith are probably going to be a better argument to make in terms of, like, the
Cloud
best PlayStation.
Is just one of, like, the coolest characters you ever play as, you know? Like, even in the original version of that game, right? And, like, before, like, the modern interpretations and stuff. Oh, 100% Janet.
Is he cool, or is his sword just big? Because I don't really... he wins here because he is a character where Sweet Tooth doesn't really have like much in the way of I think what makes Sweet Tooth a notable character other than like iconic imagery and like a cool like franchise association, while at least Cloud does have like a story arc. But I was more into like Cloud's party than Cloud himself personally.
I would say I think Cloud is like the basis for like
but I also don't really like anime shit. And I
feel
like
exactly. And that's the thing.
That's
like I feel like he is the basis for a lot of at least video game protagonists of like being cool, kind of quiet, calm, collected kind of thing. Like I think Cloud is like almost one of the OGs when it comes to that. So yeah, you gotta put.
He gets a lot of points for the dance, though. I will say that. Probably the whole character is like weighted on that scene specifically.
I love someone in the chat says, "Is Sweet Tooth cool or is his head just on fire?"
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I mean, that's what makes him cool.
I mean, the answer here is obviously Cloud, but I do want to give a shout out to Sweet Tooth. I mean, come on,
yeah, Sweet Tooth is dope.
Sweet Tooth is cool, memorable, but hey, it's Cloud. Next matchup is Jack versus Rivet.
All right, and here's where we get into it. I mean, I think. Do I have to start this off? I think Jack. I think it's like pretty easy. Not only is there more history, I think Jack is way more of a dynamic character. I think the arc goes that Jack goes on across those 3 games, especially the first 2, is one of the most dynamic and like surprising character arcs ever. I mean, taking a silent protagonist and giving him a voice, but also giving him a really distinctive personality and emotions and purpose. Like, yeah, I think it's Jack easily.
I love Rivet so much. Rivet is a character that I think is such a good addition to the Ratchet & Clank franchise, and of course the performance of Jennifer Hale as Rivet is wonderful. But yeah, I'm going Jack.
What?
Like,
hell yeah, that's right. Let's go.
Best PlayStation character.
Rivet's a fucking character. Jack is barely a character in that first game. All I'm saying. And then when they make him a character, he is just the most like almost cringy, like I'm
really. This coming from the Cloud stand, Barrett. Like this is
100%.
Jack's
Dude, the
too
second that
you,
Jack opens his fucking mouth, I cringe so hard.
Are you serious? Like I'm gonna kill Baron Praxis. That was one of the best opening moments like ever. Like that was awesome. Are you kidding?
No, it sucks.
Yeah, no,
it sucks going back to and Rivet's fucking.
And again, we're talking about the character, not the game.
I know, and I'm saying that one of the worst parts of Jack 2 is him.
I love
the
these
title
episodes,
character.
Man. Oh no, I think that's
Rivet
one of
is
the
like
best.
such a standout character for this year, and is like going forward is going to be a face of like the Ratchet and Clank universe and stuff. I think Rivet is by far and away
when they
a
were
better
talking about the
character.
power of the PS5, they pulled up the map of Haven City. All right, that's all I know. That's what's going down. And yeah, I think Jack's a fantastic character. Like I think he has such an interesting arc, and like there's so much like cool going on with him and like the world that he's in, and like yeah, I mean
I love
Yeah.
these bracket episodes so much. It's my favorite. It's my favorite episodes. I wish we could do this.
You know,
every
I
week.
knew I would be yelling at Blessing, but I didn't think I'd have to yell at you, Barrett. Like, this is such a.
Hey,
such
you're
a
not yelling at me yet.
I didn't think Blessing was gonna pick the game that he's never fucking played before as the better character.
Damn.
I mean, Janet said words. Like, Janet gave a good argument.
You really don't care that much about Rivet?
She's cool.
Greg is fucking.
See, at least you
rolling in his
feel
grave
something for
right
Jack,
now.
right? It might be hatred, it might be love. You're feeling something.
Greg likes
Rivet's
Jack and
cool.
Daxter, doesn't he?
I don't think.
I don't know.
I know he loves Rivet and was the Clank equivalent. I always forget.
Oh, Kit. Yeah. Oh man, Kit. If Kit was on here, I'd be fighting for Kit. Yeah, Kit is awesome, but yeah,
Bullshit.
Rivet's cool. Rivet's cool.
Bullshit bracket.
Next up, we got Gabe Logan
He's
versus
coming from inside the house.
Gabe Logan versus Miles Morales.
I don't want to be Gabe Logan.
I don't want to be Gabe
Miles
Logan.
Morales.
I'm going Miles Morales as well.
Yeah.
Shout out to Gabe Logan. You know, like it's
not even shout out to Gabe Logan. You know,
no. Shout out to
fuck
Gabe
that
Logan.
guy.
Bring back Siphon Filter, all that good stuff. Next matchup, we got Princess Plump versus Sam Porter Bridges. In terms of,
You're just a delivery man, you know?
Are you? Wait, hold up. Are you about to argue for Princess Plump here?
No, it said no, I mean I'm just a delivery man. Like that's great. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. No, I thought you're gonna be like, oh, he's just a delivery man. Princess Plump is where it's at. No, I'm going Sam Porter Bridges.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I think Princess Plump is more like, I think at this point more quote unquote iconically PlayStation, because like Fat Princess was a thing during the PS3 era and all this stuff, but
I wouldn't even argue that, man. I feel like we barely see like that era of game anymore, where it's like we see Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus all the time whenever we think of PlayStation now. You know, like that is, I'd say that's more iconically PlayStation today.
Yeah.
I think the easier argument, or not even the easier argument, I think there is an argument for Fat Princess and like what that meant to the PS3, but I also think that Sam Porter is just a better character, and also like I feel like Fat Princess hasn't necessarily aged as well as a concept anymore. Like I don't feel as comfortable when I look at Princess Plump and I'm like, man, this seems like they're going hard on the comedy here, and I don't know how I feel about it. Next matchup we got is Kratos from God of War versus Solid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid franchise.
I thought we were all going to be all in on Kratos, but then I found out that's not true. Because spoilers, like we had, like very light conversations and content leading up to this. And I'm like, oh yeah, definitely Kratos, right? And everyone's like, no, which I think these are both really fantastic characters. This is another matchup where
this should be the finals.
It really you hate to see it so early on. But my argument for Kratos is kind of similar to like that Jack and Daxter like arc, where I think what's cool about Kratos is when you look at him in the context of God of War 2018, where I think they, even though like Kratos' main tone is still like anger and hatred, like there's a little bit of, it's like anger and hatred with the twist of lime now. And I think that little bit of extra does add enough dynamics where Kratos is the character that I'm inclined to pick. But that being said, I think Solid Snake plays way more notes than Kratos does or probably ever will. But I still really just like what they did with evolving Kratos as to so much more than just someone who's purely only pissed off and has cool design.
This is a tough one, because like when we're thinking through the different elements of what makes a character PlayStation's best character, I usually start off with icon status and lineage, and both Kratos and Solid Snake I think have equal levels of like them being iconic to a platform, like Solid Snake being like the character for the PS1, right? Like the character that like really felt like a well-written, well-fleshed out character on the PS1. But then Kratos with God of War and God of War 2 having a huge presence in terms of like maybe not the character of Kratos being a like well-written character or whatever, but in terms of what that character and that game meant to that system. Like Kratos owns the PS2 in the way that Solid Snake owns PS1. I know people will make the argument that what about Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3 aren't Solid Snake games. Remember, like those aren't Solid Snake. Those are different characters. And so that I feel like it's kind of like those are tied up in terms of that. In terms of what make these characters good characters, Kratos as a character, I think really, really came through with the depth and the likability with the latest game. I know there's a lot of lore there. I know there's a lot in the previous games in terms of what was the story of Kratos and like what God of War was. And like I feel like people talk about God of War 2018 like it's the only God of War story, and it's not. But God of War 2018 is probably the God of War with the best story and the best told story and the most like I mean, obviously the biggest shift in story in a way that felt like it elevated the whole franchise. And so like Kratos in that last God of War, the performance of it, the power behind it, the emotion behind it, I think brings so much to it. Solid Snake, in terms of character, the thing I love about Solid Snake is that they do a good job of making Solid Snake a badass, right? Like by the time you get to Metal Gear Solid 4, which I can talk about now since Barrett and Mike have gotten there in their playthrough, right? Like Solid Snake is an old man who's going through shit and is suffering because of like the shit that's in his system, and like he's rapidly aging and he's still finding ways to be a badass, right? Like he's still the Solid Snake that you know and love. Like he's cool, he's calm, he's collected, and like I think the journey you go on with Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 1 and like the rest in the rest of the franchise, I think is a good one and it's fantastic. But in terms of character, I like Big Boss more. What can I say? I think Big Boss is a better character than Solid Snake.
Because again, there's more of a journey, especially with like Big Boss. There's more like in like this matchup here. I think there's more character growth and a solid character arc with Kratos than there is Solid Snake. Solid Snake, not 100%. Saying he's not a badass, but like especially now where Mike and I are, where we're at, right? Is like we play a Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 1, and you know back in the PS1 era, like they did tell a very impressive story, but not because it was a Solid Snake game. It was everything going around Solid Snake that made that game really cool and interesting. Yes. And we don't really get to be him again until 4, where he's like, yeah, he's interesting in 4, but as a character, it's like, I don't really know, like, really the huge difference of, like, who he is now as a person, other than, you know, he's genetically enhanced to be older, you know?
Yes. Like, Solid Snake is a cool-ass character and a dope-ass character, but when I think of Metal Gear Solid 1, or in any of the Metal Gear Solids, right, that Solid Snake is the main character in, there are other characters in his games that outshine him, right? Like,
yes,
when we look at the group of villains, when we look at even Raiden and MGS4 and like other characters that are in those games, I'm like, yeah, Solid Snake is the good, like, he's the good conduit to get us into meeting all the other characters in this world. Solid Snake is never like the one who's like, you know, shutting shit down throughout the whole games. He does have the I'm shutting shit down moments, and like I'm hyped to get to later on in MGS4 with you, Barrett, because there are some Solid Snake moments that are fucking off the chain.
We're getting close, man. I'm
we're
really
getting
excited.
There, and like you're gonna love
Tom
Solid Snake even
more.
more.
In the chat brings up a good point of like Solid Snake is more likable, but he doesn't have as much depth as Kratos does now, which I do think the most recent God of War carries a lot of like who Kratos is as a character as we think of him today.
Yeah, and talking about lineage and legacy and icon status, going back to it again, right? Like, you know, I'd mentioned that Metal Gear Solid and Solid Snake owns PS1 and Kratos owns PS2, right? But to bring it a bit forward, Kratos also owns PS4 now, right? Like the dope-ass Metal Gear game that was on PS4 was Metal Gear Solid 5, which again is a big boss game and a big boss story. Which I don't think is spoilers for Barrett because you already knew that.
Yeah.
But I was getting concerned.
I knew that before we even started those games, so yeah, no, that's fine.
But like, you know, Kratos in God of War 2018, in terms of icon, that is the PlayStation game of that generation, right? Like, of course, you can make the argument for Last of Us Part 2. I'm sure some folks make the argument for Horizon. I'm making the argument for God of War 2018. Kratos is like a fucking dope ass like character from that game, and again, means so much to PlayStation. I think. I think owns it more than Solid Snake does, even though it's hard for me to say. And so, yeah, God, Kratos is my vote. It hurts to say because I love Metal Gear Solid more as a franchise, but the character, I had to go with Kratos. Our last matchup of the cross section, damn, that took a lot out of me, Janet. That took a lot out of me. We'll get into this last one, then we'll take a break. Raiden versus Crash Bandicoot.
I'm gonna go Crash Bandicoot. I like Crash Bandicoot more as a character. I fucking can't stand Raiden. Hated him when I met him. Hated him forever. Couldn't stand his ass. Crash. Whoa, well, you know, the Crash Bandicoot song.
I'm gonna rescind my applause during the whole Raiden shit talking, but I will keep my applause for the Crash love.
Yes,
that is the Lord of Holidays. There, that is my Lord of Holidays right there.
Oh, thanks. But Crash is such an icon. Like, you know, again, not much in the way of a narrative, even though I know people are going to be like, there was a story if you understood the timeline, da-da-da, like whatever. Like, we all know the story's not, ain't no one saying play Crash 4, it's all about time for the story, you know? But like the gameplay is so incredible. Even the older Crash games, I mean, I think there's a reason those got remade, even though I do not really like the remakes. But again, we're not talking about necessarily just the mechanics and the parts. Crash is like such an icon. The racing games too, like there's a weight to this character and a love for this character, and it's just, yeah, it's Crash. It's Crash. I can go on if I need to, but it's Crash.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna upset a lot of people, but we threw some Raiden slander out there, so I'm gonna have to throw some Crash slander out there too. Crash sucks. Like, let's be honest with it.
Does Crash suck, or do you not have depth perception? Let's put it out there. Let's put it out there.
You shouldn't make a platformer like that. That's the problem. That's the problem with that game.
But it's not about the video games. It's about the characters.
The character sucks too. Like, what about Crash makes me exciting? Like, Crash is a wannabe. He's a wannabe Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario hybrid.
Here's the thing: is that like
they want Crash to be Mario. They want Crash to be Sonic so bad. They wanted Crash to be Sonic so bad.
I think he owns the edgy 90s icon status more than Sonic did.
Wait, say that again?
I think Crash Bandicoot owns the 90s edgy mascot status more than Sonic the Hedgehog did. And I will fucking stand by that statement right there. I think Crash Bandicoot is the edgy 90s mascot.
I'm just saying, when you're watching fake porn in The Last of Us, you're watching a Crash Bandicoot spoof, okay? Like, this is when you play a game in Uncharted, you're playing Crash Bandicoot. It's Crash all the way. It's his world. We're just living in it.
A lot has been said, and that I disagree with, but that's aside from the point.
I really like Raiden. Like, there's a lot of Raiden hate that we had to go through when I was playing Metal Gear Solid 2. I personally really like Raiden. We just got to that reveal in Metal Gear Solid 4 where he's like fucking cyborg ninja now, and it's really dope.
Which is the coolest shit ever.
It is the coolest shit ever.
That's where I want to pick up.
Bandicoot wins this 10 out of 10 times.
No, but also that's where I want to pick up is like, despite my utter hate and distaste, my hate and distaste for Crash Bandicoot. And I'll be honest for a second, right? As a kid, Crash Bandicoot, the commercials did work on me a little bit. The dude in the mascot costume being Crash Bandicoot worked on me a little bit. I did see that in my PlayStation Underground and went,
you see someone in a Raiden costume, I see someone in a Crash costume. I know who I want a photo with. It is Crash Bandicoot.
I'm taking a photo of. Are they new Raiden or are they old Raiden? Because either way,
you even have to ask.
Either way,
it's just Crash, baby. It's been Crash all day. It's been Crash since day one.
I liked Raiden.
It's always been Crash.
I liked Raiden MGS2. I know people have split opinions about Raiden MGS2. I liked him. MGS4 Raiden, I think, shows the range of that Raiden has as a character, where he can go from being like, hey, I'm basically like a fucking cloud anime character in this game in MGS2 to being the cyborg ninja stand-in in MGS4 and going off, having some of the most iconic Metal Gear cutscenes of all time, where he slashes through the things that move, what are they called? Geckos, where he slashes through the geckos and all that shit. What a hype moment.
Again, one of some of the most iconic Metal Gear Solid moments, I don't think can even touch the most iconic PlayStation character, Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, but I disagree. I think Crash sucks. But I will say that the audience does agree with you guys. Crash does take it in the audience vote. 68% of people believe that Crash Bandicoot is better.
I'm so excited to be friends with Barrett again.
So we had to destroy our friendship for a couple minutes when we disagreed on Jack and Rivet, but we're back together.
We are honestly. Let's be real here.
We're fruiting it up. Let's go.
Let's be real here. What are we arguing for? What are we arguing for when the next matchup is going to go against Kratos? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Which brings us.
I want him to have the honor to die a hero's death, because that's what he deserves. Okay.
That brings us to recapping the cross winners. The winners for that first round of the cross bracket are Ellie, Eco, Cloud, Jack, Miles Morales, Sam Porter Bridges, Kratos, and Crash Bandicoot. Let me remind everybody out there that you can go to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, where you can get the show ad-free. And speaking of ads, let us tell you about our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Purple. There are tons of gimmicks that promise a great night's sleep right now, but it doesn't matter how heavy that weighted blanket is. If you're sleeping on a terrible mattress, your sleep will be terrible. That's why I recommend sleeping on a Purple mattress, because only Purple mattresses have the Gel Flex Grid. And if you haven't experienced this, oh boy, do you need to change your life. It's a super stretchy, ultra squishy material that adapts and flexes around pressure points, and it doesn't retain heat. And I can attest to that. I have the pillow as well, and I never never even need to flip to the cold side because both sides are always the cold side, and it is fantastic. Getting a great night's sleep starts with having a great mattress. Get a Purple mattress. Go to purple.com/kindafunny10 and use code kindafunny10. For a limited time, you can get 10% off any order of $200 or more. That's purple.com/kindafunny10. Code kindafunny10 for 10% off any order of $200 or more. Purple.com/kindafunny10. Promo code kindafunny10. Terms apply. Next up, shout out to ExpressVPN. Are you using the internet without ExpressVPN? If so, why? That's like checking your baggage at the airport without a lock. You think your stuff is private, but you never know who's going through your underwear, and that's nasty. When you go online without a VPN, your ISP can see all your internet activity, and they can legally sell it to people who use your data to target you. But ExpressVPN encrypts and anonymizes your data so your ISP can't see your activity. It's super easy to use. Literally, you just click one button. Plus, it works on all kinds of devices, your laptop, your phone, but also things like your router, and it can protect anyone on your network. I use ExpressVPN. I love ExpressVPN. I know that my internet is safe, and honestly, that makes me feel a lot better day to day. Secure your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/kindafunny today. That's expressvpn.com/kindafunny, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/kindafunny. And finally, shout out to Upstart. What would you do if you didn't have high interest loans or credit card debt? Upstart can help you get out from under your debt and start living your life again. Upstart is the fast and easy way to get a personal loan, all online. Upstart looks at more than just your credit score, at your current employment and credit history to find your smarter loan rates. You can even check your rate in just 5 minutes for loans between $1,000 and $50,000. One of my really good friends had debt in a whole bunch of different places and was able to use Upstart to consolidate in one place, just make it a lot simpler, and now he's debt free. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/kindafunny. That's upstart.com/kindafunny. Don't forget to use this link to let them know that we sent you. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and other information provided in your loan application. Upstart.com/kindafunny.
All right, let's hop in to the triangle section.
This
the
is
triangle
really painful.
bracket. Let's start off from the beginning. We got Tony Hawk versus Victor Sullivan.
It's Sully all day.
It's Sully all day. We don't have to spend time with it. Tony Hawk was definitely there as like a 64th pick, if I'm being honest. I love Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk, real person, amazing, right?
Yeah, but we're not
Tony
talking
Hawk
about the real
man.
person. We're talking about the video game character, and that's a different thing.
I mean,
it's a different thing, but also
Tony
iconic.
Hawk, in like Tony Hawk's Underground 2, great character.
That's true.
Also, the Sully is just so like.
But has
fun.
he ever said
Like,
El Goddamn Dorado? He has not. Victor Sullivan.
no, like,
wins that
can he
all
alley
day,
on a
every day.
skateboard? I don't know, but I'd love to see it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if anyone in Uncharted can do an alley on a skateboard, it's Victor Sullivan.
I mean, that's a good point. I agree 100%. But yeah, like shout out to Tony Hawk, which like Tony Hawk is PlayStation iconic, just for the record for those listening, right? Like Tony Hawk is cool. And like you do make a good point, Barry, that Tony Hawk does have story arcs in some of those later Tony Hawk games, but it's hard to beat the one and only Victor
I wouldn't
Sullivan.
even think of him as like PlayStation iconic either. Like I know maybe that's
I mean,
just
Tony
me,
Hawk,
because like those were available on like Nintendo consoles as well at the time. Like
I know we were talking
honestly,
about those games as Nintendo games.
I'll be honest,
I
I did play Tony Hawk on my Game Boy Advance. That's
yeah,
like when I started playing
would
Tony
think
Hawk.
of like
Yeah,
Pro
but, like, those
Skater
are-
more with N64 than I do PlayStation 1. But I know I'm a weird child, so
I feel that. Next matchup is Dante from the Devil May Cry series and Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima.
I mean, I don't have like a really strong history with Devil May Cry. I have things to say about Jin, but I don't know if anyone wants to throw some Dante love out there.
I like Dante fine. Like Dante is not a character that I have like strong connection to. I like some of the Devil May Cry games, and I mean I think those games have cool cutscenes. I'd never really like had a deep connection with Dante. Even when I played DMC Devil May Cry, which is the one that changed his design, fans got furious about it when they first showed it off. I looked at it, I was like, I don't know, man. That seems fine to me. I like Jin Sakai as a character. I don't think Jin Sakai was the best written character ever. Like I think there are things that they can really improve on in terms of the writing around that character and like making him a little bit more layered and having more depth. But when I think of the best PlayStation character, I do think Jin Sakai is like a good like new challenger approaches type of thing where like I think he's definitely in the conversation in terms of, hey, by the time we get maybe a few more games in this franchise, I can see a future for you here. You might be up there with the Joels and Ellies of the world.
I think too, like for me, I definitely have some gripes on Jin's character in terms of the writing and also just the overall story that Ghost was telling. But I do think there was a really strong and clear effort on both of those categories. Like it is clear that they want to give Jin, you know, internal conflict and things that he's thinking of, and they give you those moments like in the hot springs to like contemplate, you know, you're also just leveling up your health or whatever, but to like contemplate scenarios with like family and what you're doing and what your role is. And then there's also like, you know, again, I think Jin is a little bit more, you know, lifted up by the folks around him, the things happening around him a little bit more so than his character himself. But he does, you know, he has motivations, he has relationships, he has desires, he has, I think especially too in the DLC, which I did not play all the way through, but I think that was such a fun and fascinating look at the guilt and trauma that lies within Jin Sakai. And I think there's so many layers there. It's like, okay, is this the best cake I've eaten? Not really, but there's a lot of layers here, so I can appreciate that element. It's like when you don't make a good tres leches cake. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like not as good tres leches.
Again, like I've enjoyed my time with Devil May Cry, and I think those games are awesome and fun for the action and the style, but I've never once thought about those games as games where I'm like, I want to see what the next Dante story beat is. I think, of course, folks are out there, and like I know there's probably a big group that are like, no, we care about Dante and like his interactions with all those characters, but I don't know if he's like an amazingly written character by any means.
Chad also brings up for Jin Sakai sculpted butt too. That is true. You can see his bare ass in the game. I think that's got to be worth something.
That's good.
At least.
It looks like, I mean, is your vote for Jin Sakai here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it looks like Jin Sakai does move on.
He's got a little Funko Pop too. Dante probably has a Funko Pop too. Everyone has a Funko Pop, but the Jin one is cute.
Dante, I do want to give Dante a few points for just being iconically PlayStation though, right? Like there's a lot of nostalgia tied to Devil May Cry and a lot of like ongoing, like Devil May Cry has kind of always been there for us if we need an action game to go to on PlayStation. So shout out to that. Next up, we got Cole McGrath versus Titus from which Final Fantasy is Titus? Janet, 10?
Oh god, I just thought about it.
Okay, I think you're the one that added Titus in, so I just assumed you're a big Final Fantasy 10 fan. Is that wrong? Are you not? Did you not play Final Fantasy 10?
Oh my god. Oh my god, this hurts.
Wait, what hurts? The choice?
Just because I know where this is gonna go, since neither of you care about Final Fantasy X like that.
Oh, I think actually I would give it to Titus because, like, just again, I don't want to talk too much on it because I don't really have strong feelings about it because I don't have that connection. So I'm not gonna fucking fake a connection just to be like, yeah. But I mean, I think that in terms of icon status, I think that's way more heavily weighted in Titus' favor. Part of that is the lack of history that we have with Cole, but I also think just having like heard a lot from that community on what these characters mean to them and those arcs, like I think I would just give it for the sake of that, off of just reading lots of articles and podcasts and things.
Plus,
again,
what do you got to say about, you know, Titus being a bigger icon status than Cole McGrath?
If we're talking about PlayStation icon status,
yes.
It's Cole McGrath.
No, it's not.
Cool. I put a straw poll in chat.
Like purely just iconic. Like, dude, Final Fantasy X was huge for the PlayStation 2 era.
Maybe it's just outside my purview and I just missed that one. But like in terms of like, and maybe this is just me giving points for it being first party and it being Infamous and Infamous being a recurring PlayStation franchise that we still talk about. I would put Cole McGrath in that conversation for sure. And I guess when I think of I guess part of it too is I think there are just way more iconic Final Fantasy characters even than Titus.
And like I'm not even going to bat for like character status of like how well written each one is and stuff like that. But like Titus, I would put there as like number 2, like in the top 3 of like most iconic Final Fantasy characters for sure.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, right now the straw poll is fairly even between Titus and Cole McGrath. But yeah, like for the record, my pick here would be Cole McGrath in terms of the better character here, and I think that is it. It's very apples to oranges in terms of this specific matchup because like we're talking about completely different games, right? And completely different franchises. We're talking about Final Fantasy, which has like so many installments and so many different entry points for so many different people. And like I know Final Fantasy X meant a lot to the PS2. I guess I don't think about the character of Titus because I don't hear how people talk about Titus and the way people talk about like a Sephiroth or a Cloud. Even before I played Final Fantasy VII, like I would hear things about those characters, and I never.
I've heard stuff about this character. I mean, it's not as like at the ready, and then I have the thing where I actually did play Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I have my own like thoughts and feelings and history with Cloud now. But yeah, I feel like this
right now it's very
this.
even. I need more people in chat to vote because you guys need to break this tie. I'm gonna give you guys 30 seconds to figure this thing out. But yeah, like I don't know, Cole McGrath is one that I think people still even ask for. You know, you talk about the Sly Cooper thing of people clamoring for that game to return. People ask for Cole McGrath, right? People ask for that classic Infamous to make a comeback. Like I think there's something there in terms of how important that is to
there's something there, but is it the character or is it just the game? You know what I mean?
That's
like,
fair.
and even
That's
with
fair.
the game, like I feel like, and I know people are gonna get mad at this because they're like, no, we love Infamous. What are you talking about? But like just taking like the pulse of things, like when I was looking at like PS Now and how it's like it's a part of PS Plus and all that, and kind of asking people about like the franchise, it wasn't as hot as I thought it would be. Like the reaction I got was not as clamoring as I felt like it was in other places. I don't know. I think it's a little bit more split.
I think in terms of the character of Cole McGrath, I think there's an identity that people have there because of the morality system where you can make your own like good Cole McGrath or your own evil Cole McGrath. And I think that allowed a lot of people to connect to the character in a deeper way. But oh my God, guys, break this tie. It's 50-50 right now.
You let it go too long because before you're like, it's really close. It's like 52-47. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, you know, let it be what it is. Now it's literally 50-50.
Yeah, now it's literally 50-50.
So that's not cool.
The next vote that comes in is going to decide it. I'm watching closely. I know there's more people to vote because I see the numbers in chat.
This is so tense.
There it is. Titus wins. Titus moves
Even
on.
though, like,
Thank you,
you're about to get knocked out later, but it's okay.
It's okay. Because for now, we're moving on to the next matchup, which involves a heavy hitter, Astrobot versus the Prince of all Cosmos.
It's Astrobot, man.
It's
Astrobot out here
baby.
carrying the marketing. Also, the games are again. I don't want to talk too much about.
Yeah, save this argument because like we don't even have to have the argument. I'm right there with you. Astrobot
Also,
is
like I had to look up who the Prince of all Cosmos was. I'm gonna be honest there because I was
That's
like,
on you,
wow, that I don't think that's
on
on
you.
me. I don't think that is. I think y'all.
I think some people don't know his name. I can
His
understand.
name.
Yeah, like when I
yeah.
saw him, I was like, okay, I definitely that's a Katamari thing. I've never.
Also,
fucked
they
with
sell a
Katamari,
duffel
like-
bag of his head, and it looks awesome.
His head would make a really good duffel bag. I could see that.
It's,
But like
perfect.
Astrobot, you can't even fucking. There's no shot.
Yeah.
Who
we'll
were we
get there
drawing?
when we
We
get
were
there.
drawing Astrobot. We were not drawing the Prince of all Cosmos.
God, I have arguments I want to give for Astrobot, but we'll get there when we get there. I'm sure that'll come up soon. Next up, we got Atreus versus Connor, which I'll jump in here and say I love Connor. I love Connor with all my damn heart. He was the best character in Detroit Become Human. He had the best gameplay segments. He had the best attitude. He was fucking amazing. That said, I mean, the answer is Atreus, and it hurts me because I didn't want Connor to go this early.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, why?
Why Atreus?
Yes.
I mean, why not? Right? Like,
No, bitch.
Okay, no, because
Okay.
Atreus' journey in God of War 2018 is a very emotional one, and like a lot of like the players' perspective, especially new players like myself for God of War 2018, are seeing things through Atreus'
I was out
eyes.
of pocket on that. I was like, oh my god. Okay, go ahead.
Like new players of God of War are more seeing that story through Atreus' eyes, and his journey of like thinking he's just like this normal child, just like going on this journey for his mother, and then like the arc of him learning who he truly is and his lineage, and the journey that he has to go to about not letting that go to his head, which is like what happened in a lot of the first God of War games, from what I understand. It's just like a lot of beefy dudes letting their status in their world get to them. Whereas like his journey specifically in 2018 is to like not let that happen to him. And like, yeah, there's that annoying part where he's an annoying fucking child for a little longer than you want to, but then
that's my one knock against Tracy.
That's
Atreus.
that's what makes the ending so much better, is that you get those couple of hours of shittiness to.
I mean, and I think that ending would have been just as good if he wasn't like annoying during those hours.
See, I disagree with you, but that's yeah.
My argument for Atreus is that he is the heart of that game, right? I think without Atreus, God of War 2018 isn't God of War 2018.
I think in a lot of ways too, like God of War has that like Last of Us vibe with like the character structure that it builds in terms of like both of them serving not just each other but the greater story. And I think too for like icons, it's weird. I think like Connor, I think is more of a flash in the pan character, even though Connor is
that's my thing is
really great and fun.
I think that's what makes it obvious, right? Is the fact that when you think of PlayStation, like PlayStation characters, Connor doesn't come to mind unless you think really hard about like, all right, like who's a character I really like on PlayStation? And you go through a list and finally get to Connor. I think that Atreus has the icon, like that the iconic portion of it in terms of he means a lot to this platform now, right? When you watch commercials for PlayStation,
you don't see Kratos without Atreus.
Atreus is going to pop up
hanging out together.
And like I think they've done such a good job of nailing Atreus's character to where I can see Atreus being the future of God of War, right? I can see a couple games from now, I can see them being like, cool, Kratos is dead and you're playing as Atreus for now, or like for the future, and I can see that being a thing that works because that is a character that they've built up as a I guess like a baton pass of, hey, like you are with this character that the whole game. This is a character you've known for decades at this point, cares deeply about. And I mean, I guess cares deeply about is like, I feel like that's saying a lot. But this is a character that Kratos does have to take care of and does have to grow to understand how to take care of and be a father and all these things. And I think having Atreus mean that to Kratos ends up making Atreus mean that to us. And I think that right there is how you make a good character, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I'm sold.
Yeah. It hurts me though, because I love really
Connor. I know. It's one of those things where like Connor can maybe beat a weaker character, but like he's not gonna make it here.
Next matchup, we got Jodie Holmes versus Nanako from Persona 4. Jodie Holmes is from Beyond Two Souls, right? Is that God, why I say Ellie like from Last of Us? What's the name of the actor? Why can't I think of his name?
Yeah, I'm blanking.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It doesn't matter.
Y'all, if you know, you know. You know what I mean?
Juno, like if you know, you know. I mean, the answer here is obvious, right? Elliot Page. Thank you, Chad. I don't know why I couldn't think of Elliot Page.
Well, just because, and then it gets confusing because I remember this game was so controversial because it came out around the time of The Last of Us, and then there was that whole thing of like them taking the likeness of Elliot Page. It was just like a whole thing where it's just like, it's weird.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. I mean, my pick here is going to be Nanako from Persona 4.
I think that's fine.
Easy
I'm cool
pick
with that.
for me.
Yeah.
Have you played Persona 4, Janet?
Nope, not yet.
That's a great game. It's a great game.
It's a great, again, 15 hours in. When I gave Blessing shit for this, I think on Friday or whatever, and that was before I was as far into the game as I was. And I was like, why is Nanako, out of all the characters from Persona 4 Gold, why is Nanako here? And he was like, oh man, you just got to keep playing. And I was like, all right, Blessing,
keep playing.
You're going to love memeing here. You're just memeing. And like where I'm at now, we're like, she's calling us big bro, like we're hanging out, and you know, we're planning vacation days with her dad, even though her dad's like definitely like not taking vacation days and stuff like that. Like she is a very adorable presence in Persona. She again, not as far into it, but she reminds me a little bit like in Persona 5, Futaba is like the little sister character to me in that game, and like Nanako is definitely that in Persona 4, and she's great. I love her.
Next matchup we got here is Joel Miller versus Tommy Vercetti.
Joel.
I was curious what you'd say as somebody who's been playing Vice City.
It's Joel all day.
It's hard to go up against Joel. It is Joel.
It's mostly just because Joel, it's not even so much a slight against Tommy Vercetti. It's just that Joel is like one of the best characters like ever. So, I mean, again, I could go and fight it out if you think it's needed, but
no, you don't need to fight it out because I agree with you wholeheartedly. Next matchup we got is Parappa the Rapper versus Spyro the Dragon.
I really like these ones because it's like it really can go either way, and I feel like no one would be too mad regardless. Though I've been proven wrong before. But I'm going Spyro on this. I think Parappa the Rapper, I mean, yes, like you see Parappa and you like know what's going down, you know, spitting the rhymes, doing the stuff. It was a good time. But I think Spyro is just such a iconic mascot even to this day. And such like a fun idea, I think too, and like the execution of like what that is, and like it's Spyro. It's Spyro.
Yeah, Spyro's my answer too. Like Spyro, and I think this is based on what is your connection to the platform, because I remember growing up a little bit and like getting a gauge of what other people's PS1 platformer was, and I was shocked by how many people were like, Crash Bandicoot is like the PlayStation mascot for PS1. And I was like, not Spyro? I thought it was Spyro. Like Spyro was my fucking PlayStation
is very
mascot.
Cool, and like what a fun design, and then like a little bit of again, not much, in the way of personality, but there is a little bit of personality to Spyro. You know, you got the little like sunglasses on and all that stuff. Like Spyro's cool.
And yeah, being the one to go and gather all the dragon eggs, and like, I mean, this is different from Spyro, but I think seeing it through Spyro's eyes kind of grants in a little bit to the character of like opening up each egg and each egg being a different character. It was always like a fun thing for me with Spyro that I always loved. And like, yeah, no, like the Spyro is my PlayStation 1 mascot character that I identify with and love. So that's my pick as well. And so
Yay.
to wrap up the triangle portion of the bracket, we got the winners being Victor Sullivan, Jin Sakai, Titus, Astrobot, Atreus, Nanako, Joel Miller, and Spyro the Dragon. To round out the first round of the square bracket, the first matchup is going to be Quill from Moss versus Abby from The Last of Us Part 2. Is this an argument?
No, it's Abby.
It's Abby from Last of Us Part 2.
That mouse getting beat down like it's Abby.
The mouse is getting fucking fucked up. Next up, we got Nathan Hill versus Sackboy. Nathan Hill from Resistance. Again, is this an argument?
Boy.
Yeah, it's Sackboy.
Sackboy.
I think this is where things start to get easy. Next up, we got Peter Parker versus Joker from Persona 5. And when I say Peter Parker, that is including Spider-Man. I just didn't want to put two Spider-Man on here to confuse between Miles and Peter Parker.
Right. I mean, y'all got Joker thoughts? Because again, y'all have the Persona background that I don't.
I mean, my pick here would be Spider-Man. And like the Joker is here partly because I wanted some sort of Persona 5 representation, and like people in the write-ups were like submitting Joker to be the one. I think Joker is a cool avatar character, but like, you know, I think it's in terms of this matchup, it has to be Peter Parker, just based off of how much Peter Parker means to PlayStation, not even just through Marvel Spider-Man with Insomniac, but through the whole legacy of PlayStation. Spider-Man has been present during every PlayStation generation to some extent in varying quality, but I think in all memorable ways when you go back to the PS1 and the Neversoft games to jumping into the PS2 and the movie games with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 being a very early, very great open world game that changed the game, to jumping into the PS3, and like PS3 I think was a bit more shaky in terms of the Spider-Man games there, but you did have things like the Amazing Spider-Man games, and you did have like Web of Shadows and other Spider-Man games there as well. And then you jump into the last couple of generations with Spider-Man PS4 and then Miles Morales being a launch title on the PS5. I think Peter Parker is a top tier contender for this whole bracket.
I think visually, I think Joker is really cool, and like when I think more of like what do I think of more just like specifically PlayStation? Like I see a little more Joker, but just because of like when I think Peter Parker, I'm thinking more of outside of just PlayStation, right? But I am like replaying Spider-Man from PS4 right now just to get like hype for all of like the No Way Home stuff. And he is great. Like their interpretation of Peter Parker and Spider-Man is fucking fantastic. I can't even really make an argument here, even though Persona 5 Royal specifically is my favorite game of all time. I wouldn't have put Joker on here. I would have put either like Akechi or Maruki, but I know those are harder arguments to make because not as many people have like specifically played the Royal version. I think those are just some of the best written characters. But I will say, I think Joker as a silent protagonist is a very good silent protagonist. I think that's that's just like a really hard argument to make against someone like Peter Parker, especially Insomniac's version of that.
Next up, so Peter Parker moves on. Next up, we got Wander from Shadow Colossus versus Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil.
Is this a question? Like,
I mean, if this was my own
feelings?
If this was my own personal, actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna make the argument for Wander from Shadow Colossus, because like think about it. I don't care about fucking Leon S. Kennedy. Like, how much were you into Leon S. Kennedy's character in those games?
Oh man, his character. I feel like that's such a rude question to ask, because like, you know what I mean? Like in Resident Evil,
exactly.
There's not. Even the best Resident Evil character is like still not that wavy, and I know that's gonna really upset a lot of people who have strong attachments to like what are very iconic characters. Like I think for me it's Leon's icon status more so than like his personality, because you know he's there, we're hanging out, we're doing things, like we're in Raccoon City, but I wasn't really invested in his like view. You know, he just was who I was. I wasn't attached to him. But I think for me it's just like more of the icon status of Leon. And again, probably one of the better Resident Evil characters, but what is that really saying, right? Like, it's not really a
Yeah,
franchise that thrives on great characters, especially for the main protagonists. You know, sure, there's standout characters and like the enemies and things. Like the Baker family is so iconic, but like not the person that you play as.
That's my thing is if if Leon was like a character with a lot of depth and a lot of like, I don't know, personality or any sort of layers to him, I would make the Leon Kennedy easily, because like Wander is another one that I think is a little bit more difficult to make an explicit argument for, because Wander is a silent protagonist and like Shadow Colossus is a game with not much dialogue and not much huge characterization. But in the absence of that, in like the presence of Resident Evil main characters being very much like B movie type, all right, you're just here to face horror. I look at Wander and I think about what that character means to that game and what that character means to, I guess, like I guess it's a very similar argument as Eco in terms of how they portray the character, like that character's motivations in terms of reviving this girl that he's brought here, and him having to go through the motions of I'm going to fuck up these giant beasts that aren't asking for it, right? That are like innocent in just being out here existing, but I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna go through shit. I'm gonna go through hell. I'm gonna go through fucking like the skin being ripped off of my bones essentially to save this person that I care deeply about and love, and having to do a shitty thing in order to like help this person. I think there's way more power there that would lend to Wander being a better character than Leon S. Kennedy, who for me is just a cool, like, you shoot shit and you run from Mr. X.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is just more the icon status and like the bringing back of the games and things than anything else for Leon. You know what I mean? Because like, yeah, Leon just doesn't have anything going for him. You know, he's powerful. Is your pick Leon? I think my pick actually is Leon still. Even though I think you made some good points, so I'm cool like stepping away if you feel strongly about Wander, because I did like your argument for it. But yeah, I think I'm going purely based on icon status more so than the writing or even the design. Like someone said, like, oh, his jacket's really cool. I don't even think that's true. I think Claire's jacket's better. And again, why do I like Claire? Just because she's there, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, cool. You could have replaced Leon or Claire with any other character,
like, I fuck
and it would have
with
been the same
Claire,
for me.
but like, why do I fuck with Claire? Like, just because I'm like, because she's there and she's like getting stuff done. I mean, sure, she helps. Like, spoiler, she helps that girl, but I don't really think it was a big emotional moment in the story. I was just like, yeah, let's make sure she doesn't die, because that seems like the right thing to do. It's very like flat. They're very flat characters.
Well, I put it up to chat, and chat with 100% of the votes, the first unanimous decision is going Leon, and so Leon, yes, Kennedy does move on. I'm fine with it though. Like, I just want to make the argument for Wander, and I believe I know the truth deep down. I'll make my own bracket and make it with I'll give it all the good choices. Next up, we got Aerith versus Aloy.
This is another one where we gotta kill Aerith. It's Aloy. I feel like it's
we gotta kill Aerith.
I think so.
Who do you think you are, Sephiroth?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Spoilers, but
that's fucked up. I'm sorry.
Like, couldn't even hang. Okay, anyway, but I mean, I think it's Aloy by kind of a mile. I know that's really upsetting because people love Aerith, but it's in part because I think Aloy is a good character. Like, I like her. You know, I'm still pretty early in the game. I think I'm like 25% through at best, maybe a little bit less. But I think Aloy has such a fun journey, an intriguing journey. I think like the world she's put in is compelling. I think she has like a nice cheeky curiosity to her that makes her very personable. She doesn't take any shit from anybody, but she's also not like a complete ass about it, but she's not afraid to be an ass if she needs to be. She's really strong, she's really smart, she's very caring, but also, you know, doesn't take any shit. You know, she walks lightly and carries a big stick. Is that the saying? I feel like that's Aloy's energy. They both have names that start with A. And also, I think Aloy, in terms of icon status, is not only came in strong with like a great opening game, or maybe a great opening game. I don't know what I think yet until you have to listen to the episode. I don't want to spoil my thoughts on it, but came in with a very renowned game and renowned story and is back for more. And that's why people are so excited for it, because of, I think, in large part, the strength of the character. That's me with Aloy.
It's a really tough one for me, because I think if we're talking about PlayStation icon status, these are both equal. Especially with Aerith, I think having that nostalgia factor of being there in Final Fantasy VII, like from the original on the PS1, and having that time to sit with us as a character and really like grow with us and like appear in like different iterations of the game. Of course, like I'm coming into Final Fantasy VII as somebody who started off with remake, but Final Fantasy VII has always been there in my come up of seeing friends that adore that game from the original and watching like the Final Fantasy VII like animated movie with them, right? Like Aerith means a lot to a lot of people. It has like I know has big plot points that I may or may not have spoiled spoilers for I guess previous in the episode.
That game is so old.
It's an old game,
yeah.
And I know like the argument is like, oh man,
the
remake,
a new one. But it's not, but
like the new, is it going to be the same or is it going to be different? You don't know that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we kind of know that, but
I mean we don't. They're like
we'll see.
Remake is going different directions for sure.
Right.
But like Aerith as a character, I think, just means a whole lot to PlayStation in the way that Aloy now, in terms of modern PlayStation, means a lot to modern PlayStation. So it's like it's hard to argue on that basis. In terms of the characters themselves, fuck, I love them both. Like it's hard.
I don't even know if is Aerith even like the strongest. And some in chat brings this up. That's why I'm mentioning it. It says Aloy. There are stronger characters than Aerith in Final Fantasy VII itself. I would also potentially make that argument. Like I think like even just think. And again, I guess that's not really like that meaningful of an argument in terms of we're not talking about like how strong is Aerith against a strong cast. It's like can Aerith square up against Aloy? I think Aerith's inherently at a disadvantage just given like what her role is in the game versus Aloy's role in the game, where we get to see so much more of Aloy because like that's the main if you're side questing too, you're getting like so much information and text and background building. But yeah, like again,
I mean, I would say that Aerith is probably a top tier character.
I think Aerith is definitely a standout of a very very strong cast from that game, right?
Yeah, that's what I think is like I'm my favorite character in that game is probably Barrett, just based off like some story beats. Yeah, dude, you're amazing in it. Based off of certain story beats in that game, but like Aerith is, I think, in the top tier of characters that folks love and that like to me does shine in that game. Fuck, the more I talk about it, I think the more I am gonna lean Aerith over Aloy.
I feel like people are gonna lean Aerith, and like I'm so conflicted because part of me is like, I don't really care about Aerith like that, so maybe I should like let y'all have this. But also, I feel like I don't care about Aerith because I'll be honest, I don't think the writing in Final Fantasy VII Remake is terribly strong. But again, I don't really like anime shit, and it's very anime.
Well, I'm not even talking remake here. I'm talking original because I don't love remake either.
So that's the thing. That's my history with her, and I don't want to necessarily like I don't want my own lack of information to be doing the character a disservice, but having played Final Fantasy VII Remake, Aerith wasn't hitting for me like that. Like, I ain't seeing this whole, it's like, okay, she's got cool abilities and stuff, and I loved her and Tifa and their relationship and their, the ways that they the way they kind of took hold of things, but, like, other than that, like, I wasn't moved by Aerith's personality, like... am I wrong here? Like, is it like,
I
no,
disagree, I disagree, but it's preference, right? Like, I don't think I can argue to you if like the things that you got out of Final Fantasy VII Remake didn't work for you. They didn't work for you. But I think the thing I liked about Final Fantasy VII Remake in general was the emotional resonance that you got out of the moments in the characters. Like, it's not like I guess it is a different style of writing because it is a JRPG and they do lean into like I guess the anime aspects of it, but I think the way that the game allows moments to sit when you fall from the, I guess these aren't spoilers, these are fucking iconic moments in video games, when you fall from or into the church roof, right, and you first meet Aerith and you have that moment of being like, who the fuck is this person, and like you kind of don't know how to gauge, but like the way in which it's shot and like the way the music comes in and the way that she interacts with you, it feels very almost like magical in a way that I think makes sense because that character is a character that utilizes magic. I think those moments really hit, like you like traveling over the scaffolding with her, and like getting her personality and really having to like, I don't know, having to digest like, okay, like is she like what's her deal, and the way that her character I guess opens up over the course of the game and you get more and more Aerith as it goes. I really like that character. I really like where they went with that character, and I think just in terms of when talking about visual design as well, I guess both Aloy and Aerith have this to some extent, but like I love how those characters like dress. I love their style of how they look, and yeah, I don't know. Like again, this is one that I think can go either way for me.
What would you say is Aerith's personality? Like I know it's like, oh, didn't you play the game? I'm like, what about that like is meaningful to you? Like you're mentioning, like I like how you brought up the way in which you're introduced to the character and how that helps enhance who she is, but I mean, who is she? Like, what would you say, like, makes her stand out as a character?
I guess for me, it is the interactions, and it is like it's what goes on. What goes on around her in terms of like when she brings you back home and you meet her mom and you like go through all that stuff. I think the way they unravel that stuff is good, but also her inner personality, I think I would describe her as like more floaty, but also like never like she's never like incapable, right? Like it feels like she always kind of knows what is happening and has a deeper knowledge that you only get the more you interact with her. And to the point that toward the end of the game, you feel like she's actually like, oh fuck, like she is
and when she
one of the
first
more
joins
knowledgeable
you,
people
like
here.
she feels like the more innocent part of your group and stuff, whereas like everybody else is a little more hardened with everything that they've
like
gone through, and she's like a little bit of like she's the hopeful part of the team. I felt like, and
yeah, like she brings a light to the game, I think is the way I'd put it, right? Like there is this energy and light to her that she brings to your party, but it never feels like I gotta take care of this character. I gotta fight for Aerith. Oh, damn, Aerith is in trouble. Like it's never that, right? Aerith holds her own, and Aerith helps out the rest of the team because she's the healer. I think they'd have that good balance of making that character feel like they are the heart of the game, without sacrificing often what that often brings with characters who have to play that role. And it looks like. Wow, this is a really
chat was like this. So Ryan says democracy sucks when you lose, and I feel that's so strong.
I mean, democracy is a very interesting thing because with the final vote, very close, 52% to 48%, Aloy wins. Aloy takes it. Aloy moves on.
There was no good answer here. I will say that. Like, and again, I don't stand Aerith like that. Like, I have no attachment to Aerith, but I can acknowledge that, like, clearly, like, looking at the seating, like, those are two very beloved characters. So, you know, someone's going to get hurt here. It just wasn't me.
Speaking of two beloved characters, next up, we got Knack versus Ratchet.
It's Ratchet.
Knack all the way, baby. AK Knack, let's go.
Next up, we got Maiden in Black versus Colt Vaughn.
Oh, man. I mean, I'm inclined to say Maiden in Black, even though I do stand Deathloop, and I love Deathloop, and I like Colt a lot. Do I love Colt? I don't know. I think he lost a lot of points when he turned on that machine and said, "Purr for me, baby." For me, like, I just hated that. And he does it so many times, but light mechanical spoilers for that game. Maiden in Black, so Demon Souls and I think those games kind of in general, like those type of games, they're so interesting because so much of it's so much more about like the lore in the world and the kind of greater plot and like reading little descriptions of items and stuff when it comes to like story. That being said, I thought Maiden in Black really shined as sort of that character core of the game for me, where I'm, without spoiling, I guess, the ending of the game, like, continually coming back for the upgrades and seeing her. I think her design is also very striking. And she's kind of like, part of that, but literally and figuratively, that home base. And I think there's just like a lot of, I don't know, there's like a silent and intriguing power to her that I find really appealing and intriguing and fun. And Maiden in Black is just like so iconic to me, and I think to so many others, that I'm going to have to give it to Maiden in Black over Colt. And then again, I think when we think in terms of icon status, there is the bias of having more time, so that, Colt's never going to be able to catch up to that element. But also thinking of what Demon Souls means to PlayStation, and that being one of the first and still one of the only, like, quote unquote true PS5 experiences in terms of you can't have this anywhere else, for all those reasons. And yeah, Deathloop does have that for sure. Deathloop is one of the few other ones. So I guess that's an argument for both of them. But that's kind of my thing for Maiden in Black. So there we go.
So I mean, my vote is for Colt from Deathloop, and I think part of that is Maiden in Black was not somebody I was aware of until you added them to the list, and I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize there's a character in Demon Souls who I probably would have met actually. I think I met Maiden in Black, but I never registered her as a character. So I think that's part of why I go Colt, but then also I think Colt as a character is fairly well written, and I think the comedy of Colt is the thing that I really like. The personality, the attitude. I am with you in terms of when he says like "purr for me, baby." It's kind of like, okay, whatever. But like in general,
it was so jarring. Like, it's the only part of the game I don't like.
I do love how they introduce this character as like, hey, this character is as clueless as you are, but then you have those early moments of the game where I don't want to spoil anything because the game is fairly new, but like there are moments that you have where you kind of get Colt's personality and like God, I can't, the things that I want to say I can't work around without actually saying directly, and so I just won't say that shit. I love his dynamic with Juliana. I love his jokes, I love his comedy, and I love his attitudes. I think the thing I'll say, I love the writing of Colt.
I also will, as a shout out to Colt, and I'm kind of okay with anyone winning these. I think they're both two really great characters and very different characters. Again, Maiden in Black is not really like, like you said, you forgot that she even existed. I think that also speaks maybe to a bit of a detriment in terms of her character. But I think speaking to Colt, and what I like about Colt as a character as well is I think in terms of his writing, they do such a good job at anticipating player thought and player feeling and then letting that merge with Colt and his character. A fun example being, again, very light mechanical spoiler, but when you're carrying the little bobblehead with is it Alexis? The rich dude. Yeah, right. And he's like talking, and you hear him talking, and you're just like, you just want him to shut up because one, he's annoying, and two, he's like alerting all these enemies, and it stops, and then you think as a player like, oh, it's over, and then it turns on again, and he's like, and you're aloud, I'm just like, oh, god damn it, and he's like, god damn it, I think they do so many of those fun moments with Colt and who he is, that he's a very fun character.
Well, it looks like the poll might be broken, actually, because I'm looking at it right now, and it is 57% to 50%. But Colt is winning, but that math does not add up because that is 107%.
The math ain't mathin'.
The math ain't mathing right now.
People were so passionate that they showed up over the amount that's possible.
I mean, it looks. I guess I'm just gonna give it to Colt. Like, it might be that it's broken, but yeah, at 57%, Colt looks like he's moving on. And then our last matchup of the square bracket is Daxter versus Celine from Returnal.
You're the Returnal stand here. Let's paint me a word picture with Celine and her character.
I mean, like, I'm not gonna sit here and act like Celine is a fucking has super levels of depth in her character, or like even her personality isn't necessarily like something that is super memorable or super standout. I mean, I think like the so much of Celine's story is told through audio logs and then like weird cutscenes here and there, but there's not really much to grapple onto in terms of identifying with that character. I think that the thing I will say about Celine is that I think Celine is an example of a PlayStation character that is newer to the PlayStation ecosystem, but I think does have relative impact for being from a studio that hasn't had that kind of character story before on this level. And I do think that she is a character that's going to mean a lot to PlayStation going forward in terms of appearing in those highlight reels or those like the PS5 advertisements, right? Whenever we get like a PlayStation State of Play that has like a reel to show off like this is what the PS5 has been, I think Returnal will be, or Celine from Returnal will be oftentimes like centered in that. And I think she's going to mean a lot to PlayStation in terms of what this new era of PlayStation means, with a lot of partnerships and PlayStation Studios specifically, and how expansive that is beyond just the first party stuff. That said, the character of Celine herself has cool stuff there. Like, there are plot reveals that are intriguing, but nothing for me that made me go, oh shit, I love Celine. She's not really that type of character.
Yeah, like the plot stuff that happens in Returnal, I think, is more of the growth of the allegory of what that story is, rather than like who Celine is as a character. Like, yeah, you were saying like there's ways that like they kind of reveal things about her in specific ways, but again, I feel like that's less character building and more of just like, let's talk about grief in a very interesting way. I think is more so what that game is about.
Janet, do you have an argument for Daxter? Because I know you're the Jack and Daxter.
Yeah, I mean, Daxter's fun. Like, what can you say? Like, I mean, I think he's a great sidekick that has his own personality that shines, which I think PlayStation definitely has a strength at building really personable side characters, right? We see that with the Ratchet & Clank franchise as well. And I think, Daxter too, on a deeper level, like in terms of his personality, he is like very much a driving force in the entirety of the franchise. And that cuts even deeper if you play through all three of the games, again, without spoilers, even though the game is very old. So he has like huge significance in the franchise. He had his own game, and that game was fantastic. One of the best games on PSP, a must play. And he just has like a nice bit of charm to him. He's a little bit gross at times, so there is that, but he's fun, he's spunky. Yeah, I would argue for him. I think he's fun, spunky, and super iconic. And again, like, few can have their own, especially as a mascot, as like a side character mascot, few can have their own games and have it like be really of quality, but he has that. And I think too, there's like a lot of just like fun little details added in his animations as well. I remember watching a short documentary on the for the anniversary of Jack and Daxter, I think the 10-year when they did the PS3 remasters, and the animator mentioned how they took a lot of inspiration from like Aladdin and how like those two characters play off each other in Daxter's animation. So I think even in that, you kind of see his personality shine through in a multitude of ways. Yeah, I mean, Daxter's a freaking fantastic character. I could go on, but that's my argument.
Daxter moves on then, because I'm deferring to you here. Like, I'm not going to argue for Celine from Eternal, because I don't really have anything to argue for here. I like her, but I don't. Daxter, I think, is a more memorable name.
Now, you know, all the death and his little voice lines for your deaths and stuff. It's cute.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
I would argue he's also a little more iconic than Jack himself.
Maybe I don't know if we'll even get to that conversation, but if we do,
we'll get there when we get there. That rounds out the square bracket and brings the winners to being Abby from Last of Us Part 2, Sackboy, Peter Parker, Leon Kennedy, Aloy, Ratchet, Colt Vaughn, and Daxter. That brings us finally to the second round of our big PlayStation Best Character bracket. We're making our way back to Circle with our first matchup, Clank versus the Hunter from Bloodborne.
Oh man, this is a weird one for me. I mean, I think Clank is fantastic for a lot of the reasons I just mentioned, you know, complimenting Daxter, because again, they both have very similar writing structures in terms of like, wow, you gave a lot of personality to what is still a side character. And for the Hunter, I guess the argument really is just the icon status of the game and playing as that character more so than, again, the Hunter doesn't really have, when we had this conversation during the first round, have a personality like that, while Clank does. So I'm inclined to give it to Clank, but again, I'm not the Bloodborne person on the call.
I mean, I'm giving it to Clank. Clank is my pick.
All right.
Hunter is, they're an avatar, right? Like, it's hard to make an art like against who's Hunter going up against before? Against Delson Rowe, yeah, I'm gonna go Hunter. But against Clank, come on, bro, it's Clank. It's Clank all day. I love Clank. Clank has personality.
He's a little backpack.
He's a little backpack that has like fucking propellers that shoot.
And he's super smart. Like, yeah. Anyway,
next up,
he's great.
Heihachi versus Lara Croft.
Lara Croft, I think, right? I mean, I feel like, to me, I'm thinking back on our earlier conversation about Laura and her impact, and I think just in terms of impact and iconography, like she hits both of those, I think, more than Heihachi does. But again, I was never like stan Heihachi to begin with, so maybe I'm off base here.
I definitely stan Heihachi more than Lara Croft personally, but I think in this bracket, I have to vote for Lara Croft, just in terms of if I want to be real and objective about it and not just go by my favorite character, right? Like, I think Lara Croft is the easier pick because Lara Croft does mean more to PlayStation in that way. And like, it's hard too because Heihachi is part of a roster, and when I'm talking about the characters from Tekken and like how much that game means to the PlayStation, I think there's an argument for Tekken. I don't know if there's an argument for Heihachi specifically from Tekken, right? I think it is the combination of him and Jin and Kazuya and all the other characters in the franchise that elevate that series. Next up, Chloe Frazer versus Sora.
Oh man, I don't even know what to do with this. I mean, I think Chloe's probably like, okay, I don't have a Kingdom Hearts history, so I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't actually know Sora that.
I mean, I can go first. I'll tell you that my answer is Sora. Like, as somebody who does have a little bit of a Kingdom Hearts history, I have a very split history of Kingdom Hearts in terms of how I feel about it overall. But I do have that. I do love Sora as a character, especially for the Kingdom Hearts that I have touched and played. I think there's something special about Kingdom Hearts. I think there's the icon status of it. I think Sora is a character that, like, upon playing Kingdom Hearts 1, it's hard not to love Sora just based off of the Disney magic that is associated with Sora. And so I got to go with Sora here.
I'm okay with that in the sense I think Sora is like insanely iconic. You know, all any feelings or preconceived notions aside, because again, I don't have like a Kingdom Hearts history like that. And then people are weird about Kingdom Hearts, so I don't know. But like, I mean, Sora is very iconic, so I think I'm okay with that, even though I'm not sure. Without knowing more, I can't really have a greater opinion anyway.
I can't argue the icon thing, but I would argue that Chloe is a better character.
That's what I was thinking. But again, I don't want to say that because I actually don't know anything about Thor like that. Like, I don't know his arc, so I don't want to comment.
That's the thing is, it's tough because like it's tough because of Kingdom Hearts history, right? I love Sora, but I love Sora from Kingdom Hearts 1. Kingdom Hearts 2 and like all the Kingdom Hearts beyond Kingdom Hearts 1 get into the weeds with characters in ways that like I'm not going to touch on fucking like what the story is of Kingdom Hearts and like how Sora evolves as a character, because it goes fucking beyond what's worth touching on. And it becomes impossible to compare to Chloe Frazer, who is like it's essentially like it's Indiana Jones versus I don't know, man, the Bible in terms of like, oh, what does characterization better? It's
Not
like
you.
it's like
I know you don't
very
mean
weird
it that way.
comparison.
I know
It's like-
you don't mean it that way, but
I don't
it's
mean it
so
that
funny
way.
to hear this statement. Kingdom Hearts is like the Bible. Like as an
That's more
isolated
so.
thing. I know.
That's
I
more
get what
so
you meant.
in like how fucking
what you
deep
meant.
that shit goes, right?
I get what you meant. I think the
Yeah.
Bible might make more sense than Kingdom Hearts does, but I'd have to read more of the Bible
really
and play more
doesn't.
Kingdom Hearts
It really doesn't.
to know.
Hey, to each their own. You know? Next matchup
There's
we
a lot
got
going on
here.
here. We offended a lot of people, I think, with that statement.
Yeah, I try to move on. Nathan Drake versus Big Boss. I'm going Big Boss, baby. Like
I'm
it's not even.
Boss.
It's not even an argument.
Barrett, you had a sound. Do you have like feelings here?
My argument, and this is like the weird one where it's like we've only had one game so far where we've really gotten to know Big Boss, and I would say Big Boss was the least interesting thing in his own game. That's not to say that he was like a bad character or anything. I just like, much like Snake and Snake's games, I think Big Boss is the thing that stood out the least. I think like that moment at the end when you get the title of Big Boss, that's really cool. And you get to like understand the legacy of this character that you really only have heard about in the first two games in the Metal Gear Solid series. And I know in like the original Metal Gear game, like, you know, you met him really quick. And I would say like as a character, I personally enjoy more what they do with Nathan Drake in Uncharted 4. I would say if like I had only played the first 3 games of Uncharted and had only played Metal Gear Solid 3, I would go Big Boss here. But I think of just like what Uncharted 4 did for Nathan Drake as a character, I think does. Again, I haven't played, you know, Metal Gear Solid 5 and stuff like that, so I really don't know. But again, from what I've heard about the story of Metal Gear Solid 5, it's nothing to write home about. I would personally go Nathan Drake here, but y'all have spoken.
I will say the one thing that I think Drake has in favor of him is I think Nathan Drake is, I would say, a little bit more iconic than Big Boss, personally.
Yeah.
I mean,
Big Boss is kind of cooler. Like
Big Boss, I think specifically, but not Snake, right? I think Snake is more of a Snake as a title that Big Boss and Solid Snake both carry. I would say Snake is more iconic than Nathan Drake. But I think there's also I can see the argument either way, just for what icon means to different people, for PlayStation especially.
Do we have an answer here? Because I'm kind of like a
I mean,
little
Big
bit
Boss
torn now.
is my choice. I mean, we got to go. We got a lot more to go.
We
So
have an review to do in an hour.
Yeah, if you want to go Nathan Drake, I can drop the straw poll.
Nah, let's actually. Let's just. I don't know. Just do a poll. Yeah, screw it.
All right, let's go. All right, creating the straw poll. So are you not as big of a Big Boss fan then? Janet?
Yeah, like I mean, I'm thinking about who's more iconic for that, because I think character wise it's Big Boss. Because I don't actually think, but I haven't played through all of Uncharted 4 either. But I don't think. I think when you color the shades of Nathan Drake, you're not exactly using a lot of crayons in the box. So then I think it comes down to who's cooler, and I think Big Boss is cooler. But who's more iconic? I think Nathan Drake's probably more iconic.
I mean, I disagree with that last part, but I also think I don't think it's like a big gap between the two. I think for PlayStation, there are similar levels of iconic for sure. Sorry, I'm like saying this as I'm trying to like make this straw poll on the fly. I think they hit similar levels. I'll still remain the argument that I gave before in terms of what Metal Gear Solid means to PlayStation, and like I think Big Boss specifically, right? That's Metal Gear Solid 3 that we're talking about, and Metal Gear Solid 5 that we're talking about, and Peace Walker. And I guess Peace Walker, you can make the argument for handheld and how much better of a game like the Metal Gear games were for handheld, specifically also, Peace Walker on PSP.
While waiting for votes to come in,
games.
You mentioned how like, oh, the poll's broken because it was like 57-50. Someone in chat pointed this out like a while ago. I wasn't able to mention it. It's not broken. It's just that technically
you can choose both.
You can choose both. Yes.
Yeah.
But okay, so I want to know who in chat is out here choosing both, because that's like some true chaos. Like, just I'd rather you just not say anything. Why are you saying both? It's just who is
they wanted to make their voice heard.
Here? What are you doing here? What are you getting done here?
They believe both characters should make it to the next round.
And it looks like with a majority vote, Nathan Drake is moving on right now with 76% of the vote. So congratulations, Nathan Drake. I'm gonna be honest, in my personal Photoshop doc that I'm using, I had already moved on Big Boss because I thought it was a sure thing. I thought it was an easy choice. You disappointed me today. You disappointed me with this one today.
Why should today be different than any other day?
That's fair. That's honestly very fair. Moving on to the next matchup, we got Ellie versus Eco.
Ellie.
It's easy.
Again, one of the best characters ever. the end. We'll talk about that more when a better character squares up.
Next up, I mean, we're not too far off because next up we got Cloud versus Jack.
You already know I'm going to say Jack. I already had my reasons from before. You already know I don't like Cloud. I think he's like flat and boring and mean and brooding and boring as hell. And he has a big sword. That's it. But I feel like I'm probably going to be outnumbered here, so I won't say too much more. Everyone
I am making
Cloud.
the straw poll as we talk because I am going Cloud.
Yeah. I need to go Cloud.
Jack,
I think everyone's going to go Cloud.
I mean, we'll see. I was shocked by the Big Boss versus Nathan Drake. I would have sworn Big Boss.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a tighter vote there.
I thought that was going to be easy, but people went hard for Nathan Drake in that poll. And
I
so
think people
the
are
straw
go
poll.
hard for people love Cloud. People love Final Fantasy VII, like and Final Fantasy in general. Like I don't think Jack has a chance in hell, but
I also think that
I think Jack has more going on for like his character and his story personally. But also, I don't know all of Cloud's life. I'll throw that out there. I know Jack's entire life. I don't know Cloud's life. Maybe at one point he develops a personality that I don't know about, but
I think there's the argument too that with Final Fantasy VII, there's multiple characters that are so. When you talk about the best character, I'm sure people have various arguments for various different characters that are not Cloud. But
yeah, like I don't know anyone who's capping for Cloud as like the most interesting person. And then I got a lot of negative Final Fantasy VII thoughts.
I would say he's up there with like interesting with character
I love
stuff. Yeah, I love
Cloud.
Is he a good
again,
character
and
or is his sword cool?
No, I think he's a good character. And again, this is not based off of like I don't like Final Fantasy VII Remake. I've been, quoted on that many times. I'm talking strictly like the original version of that game. I think Cloud is fantastic, and I mean,
having played my Final Fantasy VII Remake and playing like I did that the start of my playthrough of Final Fantasy VII the original last year after I played Remake, and I made it a bit past halfway through the game. I put in like 20 something hours. I really like Cloud in that original game too.
Yeah.
He has a different attitude than in Remake. He's a bit more outspoken and a bit more like more of a character than in not more of a character. I guess more of like an outgoing kind of like badass a little bit character in the originals than he is in the new game. The new game he's a bit more laid back and muted, but like he shows off as cool more so than like he's out there like saying shit. He's not like out there saying all the cuss words, except in that one scene in Final Fantasy VII Remake where he does say a cuss word. It was really cool. Cloud has won the vote with 75%.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Cloud. Next up, we got Miles Morales versus Sam Porter Bridges. And this is easy, right?
Miles?
Sam Porter Bridges. Oh, yeah.
Miles Morales. Shout out to
Miles.
Miles.
You gotta stop playing these games,
No,
man.
I'm kidding. I haven't even fucking touched that one game. I don't even know what it's called anymore. It's Miles.
Next up, we got Kratos versus Raiden.
Kratos?
Yeah, I'm going Kratos too. I love Raiden. One of my favorite characters in that franchise, but Kratos does win it all here. That brings us over to the opposite side of the bracket. We got Victor Sullivan versus Jin Sakai.
Oh man,
I love this matchup.
I want to go Sully, to be honest, and I think he's at a disadvantage because he has like a much lesser role than Jin does inherently. Like side character versus main character. But I love Sully's, again, it's more of a one-note personality, but it's a really freaking good note. Like, he's my favorite character in that entire franchise. Like, he's awesome.
Listen, best character means a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? But part of what best character means is best character. And fucking, you don't get better than Victor Sullivan. I love Victor Sullivan. Sully is awesome, guys. Like, come on.
I fucking love Sully. Let's go.
Sully is the only
Sully.
person I want to see. Like, whenever I play Uncharted and Sully pulls up, I'm like, fuck
and I'm just
yeah,
saying,
Sully's here.
Listen, is Jin noteworthy for being a main character? Sure,
yes.
Yeah. Do we love Ghost of Tsushima? Yes. Like,
does he have a sculpted butt?
Tsushima.
Yes. But when
is he
you
a
go
samurai?
Back to,
cool.
But when you go back to young Sully, young Sully could get it. I'm just saying, he was hot.
God, Victor Sullivan,
That's another layer we should have added here.
Goddamn
Hotness? Sullivan. Who cares who can kill who? Who's hotter? Let's like go down to brass tacks here with this.
Exactly. Next up, we got Titus versus Astrobot.
I mean, I kind of want to go Astrobot, but again, I feel like I don't want this to. Well, I mean, it's just us here, so
I'll say go with what you want to go with. Yo,
there's no greater.
It's just us here, and then Barrett on the ones and twos.
Yeah, it's just.
I'm going Astrobot.
We're going Astrobot, yeah.
Let's go, baby.
Astrobot's charming as hell.
Yeah, I feel like I would be the one who would show up for Titus more, but like, nah, it's Astrobot. No shot.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Atreus versus Nanako from Persona 4. The Battle of the Children.
I'm inclined to say Atreus, but again, I don't want to shade Nanako because I don't know Nanako like that.
Yeah, like I love Nanako, but again, granted, like I have not played enough for her to like even reach the heights of like what they do with Atreus as a character and a character arc and stuff like that. But I don't know, they could go with places. I still have probably like 70 hours left in that game, so.
Just so you know, by the way, people are gonna be pissed about Jin. Just so you know, just look.
Oh yeah, I'm already seeing
be aware. Like, be aware of your
people like this. What is this? And I'm
again,
like, none of
if you
this
got
is.
Complaints, if you got complaints, tweet them at me.
Yeah.
At GameOverGreggy on Twitter.
Exactly.
I'm really split with this one. Like the Persona fan in me really wants to go Nanako because Nanako is such a sweet character that I think is the heart of that game.
We could also, well, I feel like it's an awkward poll too because I feel like part of it is familiarity for a lot of people. No offense to everyone that's in the chat who maybe y'all all are rocking Persona 4, but I think we have to kind of pick somebody.
I mean, I think it's got to start with us two, and if we can't decide, then the chat gets a say. But it has to start with us two, and between us two.
I mean, I think it's like, Atreus, right?
I mean, do you love Atreus? Is Atreus something you'd make an argument for?
Do I love him? That's a little strong. I mean, he's alright. Like, I don't. He's cool. I don't.
Yeah.
If he has to die, I don't mind, but I want him to die for a reason.
If he has to die.
You know, like if you tell me, like I trust you and your Persona knowledge. If you're like Nanako got the fire, got the heat, and then fine, Atreus can just be left away in the wayside.
Nanako means a lot to me as a character. I think in a battle of best PlayStation character, I'm going Atreus. I got to go Atreus. I think Atreus is just like too.
I was inclined to think that, but.
Too iconic, and I think in terms of like writing, I think one, it's apples and oranges because of who these characters are and the type of games they're in. But I think I think they hit similar levels of, oh man, I love this character so much. I would die for this character, right? I feel that same way about Atreus and Nanako, both kind of equally. Well, I'd die for Nanako before Atreus, but I think Atreus, in terms of writing, is like really well done, except for the chapter where he's really whiny.
But again, there's a point to that, and I think
but I don't think it was worth it. Right. Next up, we got Joel versus Spyro the Dragon. Stay with me, that's Joel.
Spyro the Dragon.
It's Joel. I love Spyro though. Like Spyro's great. It's Joel.
Next up, we got Abby versus Sackboy.
It's Abby.
It's Abby.
100%.
It's Abby.
Next up, Peter Parker versus Leon S. Kennedy.
Oh, it's Peter Parker.
Peter Parker.
Again,
yeah,
Leon, lucky you even made this far, to be honest.
Yeah, like Leon was about to get clipped by the Shadow from Shadow of Colossus.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Aloy versus Ratchet.
Man. Also, sorry I made that sound because I feel like that's annoying as hell. But Ratchet has way more history. I'm gonna go Aloy. I think Aloy's better written. I think Ratchet's fun. He's got some sparkle to him. And I think the closest to dynamics I would give Ratchet is, you know, becoming a more selfless person. Like the Ratchet that Ratchet is in, is it new and Rift Apart? Like there's so many time things that I'm like cracking time. Like it's all time. So it was tripping me out. But I think like the amount of care that Ratchet has is like so different than the first game where he barely wanted to do anything and he only gave a fuck when his planet was gonna get destroyed. Then he decided, I guess I'll help. You know, he was like real trash in that first game. I think he's come a long way, but I also don't think that shift was very nuanced or intriguing. For me, Ratchet as, you know, game as a character is in the fun tool set Ratchet has and the idea of going on a cool adventure, not so much in his character himself. So I'll pick Aloy.
This is a really, really close matchup for me because of I think there's a lot of nostalgia there with Ratchet that hits for me because I've loved Ratchet and Clank since having a PS2. But in terms of character, I think I do have to go with Aloy just because I think Aloy just has more like personality and depth to him or to her that I think speaks a bit more than Ratchet. Like Ratchet, of course, I love for the humor and for the attitude and the Pixar aspect of it, but the thing I will say is that, you know, back on PS2, I think Ratchet had a little bit more of that edgy Pixar-y kind of vibe to him and had like a little bit more of the like wackiness to him. And modern Ratchet in the last couple of games, for me, has felt a bit more polished in a way that has taken away from his personality a bit. Like I like Ratchet still, but I don't feel like Ratchet is like bringing that peak Ratchet energy anymore, right?
He's not Ratchet enough.
Yeah, he's not Ratchet enough. You know, I think lately I've missed a little bit of that Ratchet, like, being goofy, being or at least the humor hitting it. Maybe it's just me growing as a person.
I think part of him growing to not be a piece of shit also kind of took away some of his vibe in a weird way. Like, at least being trash is still part of a character, and I think once you remove that, it shifts in a weird way. There was a really interesting review, and I wish I remember who the reviewer was because it was on YouTube, but they did a review of the sort of like remake, not remake, based on the movie, game, the Ratchet and Clank 2016 or whatever, and talked about the changes they did make there, where they made, back in the original, like, Clank, again, not Clank, Ratchet was kind of an ass, and he'd be like, oh, like, this person's a nerd, they're a dork, like, whatever, like, this is stupid. And he kind of loses some of that fire, and sure, maybe that makes him a better person, but doesn't necessarily make him a better character, and they really have changed who he is, and he doesn't have that, he's not biting really anymore, he's just a good guy.
Exactly, yeah. I'm right there with you. And so it looks like,
I think you need to be trash to be interesting. It's just that there's not layers in. Again, I would argue like Jin is, even though Jin died earlier in the bracket rip, but like I would argue Jin is mostly just like a good guy trying to do good, but he has conflict. That's how you can still create intrigue in being good. And I don't think Ratchet has that.
I agree. So Aloy moves on, and then our last matchup of this round of the bracket is Colt Vaughn versus Daxter. I'm going to defer to you here. I don't really have a horse in this race. I think like if I had to choose, I would go with Colt, but I think that's more so because I just don't have that familiarity with Daxter, and I like Colt's riding. You played both, and so I'm going to let you.
I think I'm going to go with Daxter.
Damn. So Daxter moves on, everybody.
They both kind of weirdly have similar personalities. Like, they're jokey and like whatever. I mean, obviously Colt is way more mature in that he's like a human being, and Dexter is technically a human being who's turned into an asshole.
Yeah, but he's like
he's also a kid
goofy
when he
teenager.
Turns into an asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
That brings us to the third round. Right now, who we have left are Clank, Lara Croft, Sora, Nathan Drake, Ellie, Cloud, Miles Morales, Kratos, Victor Sullivan, Astrobot, Atreus, Joel Miller, Abby Anderson, Peter Parker, Aloy, and Daxter. Let's go back to the circle bracket and start off with Clank versus Lara Croft.
I kind of want to say Clank. Again, like a little bit more of like a stark personality, though Clank's notes aren't that nuanced. I know I bring up notes a lot in like music, but like that's the only thing. Like, I don't think Clank goes through as many, because Clank does not go through as many interesting scenarios as Laura. I feel like Laura might be a better and more nuanced character, and thus like the better character between her and Clank. But I'm really split on this. These are just my initial thoughts from seeing these two matched up.
I mean, you got to make a commitment. You got to go one or the other. You only got two options here.
I don't have to make a commitment because you could just say what you think, and then maybe it'll sway me one way or the other.
I mean, I would go Lara Croft personally. Like Lara, I think it's tough against Clank because Clank isn't the main character, and so much of what makes Clank, I think, is Clank's dynamic with Ratchet and their back and forth. And I think, when we're talking about icon status, Lara just means more to PlayStation than Clank from Ratchet and Clank.
But this isn't PlayStation's most iconic character. It's best character.
Yeah, but we've established this, Barrett, that like icon status plays a big role into what for me I would say.
Yeah,
for
sure.
But also I'll say Lara is
Am I hearing Clank from you, Barrett? Is that where we're at?
I think Clank 100%. I think Clank has a much more interesting personality, and because of his relationships with others, like I think I think there's more there than Lara. I think Lara is like a very iconic PlayStation figure there, but I don't think that outweighs of just like how fun and interesting a character Clank is.
I think a poll would probably be a good split for this.
So wait, hold on, because I need you to choose something.
Really?
So it goes us first and then chat.
Man,
Chat's not deciding this poll.
I think I'm gonna go Clank.
Okay, then it does bring us to a poll in that case, which I am making right now. And I'm dropping into chat. Yeah, I mean,
like, Laura defined the PS1. I'm like, yeah, but like, where are we now? You know what I mean? Like,
they're responding to somebody in the chat who was like, is Lara Croft PlayStation? And the answer is yes, right? Like,
also too, like, I mean, I get that question, but like, we're far beyond that. It's not we're just gonna she's not, so let's just edit the entire structure of it.
I do disagree in terms of like the writing of like when we're talking about Clank versus Lara Croft in terms of characterization. I mean, I'm going Lara Croft still, right? And I think like that comes with the latest games and the story around those. Like, you're not going to sit here and tell me that like Clank's, I guess, character arcs throughout Ratchet and Clank are like above and beyond what the last few Tomb Raiders have been.
No, but I think they stand out more. Just that's well,
I
just
think
for me personally.
If you're just seeing both of the characters though, like I don't know. Like it takes a lot to like Clank is a really interesting and dynamic character, and I think he is iconic in his own way. I think he's less impactful, but again, it's not necessarily all based on impact. Also, I think it's tied right now, right?
Yeah, it's tied right now.
At 50-50.
So I'll give you guys about 30 more seconds to make your decision. But yeah, like I mean, and here's the thing, I love Clank. And I think again, it comes back to me, not necessarily like I think if Clank was the main character of the Ratchet and Clank games, I know there's Secret Agent Clank and there are those out there. Maybe for me, I think there'd be an easier argument for it. I just don't think he gets the shine and like the focus in those games in order to grant him status above Lara Croft. I think Lara Croft is too big, like too big and too important for PlayStation. I think
too, though, even though I'm kind of like I am siding with Clank mostly here. I think to Laura's credit, like because one thing that comes up is like how they're given the chance or not given the chance to showcase their personalities. And while I think Laura inherently has more opportunity to showcase her personality, I think she also takes that opportunity in a way that not every like human character automatically does, because we've had other characters that have had roles similar to Laura in that sense, in terms of like not first person, but like main character, in like a more serious story, who don't stand out. And I think Laura still does to a degree. So I think that is a testament to her character at the very least.
With a very close vote, Lara Croft does go on with 54% versus Clank's 45%. Next up, we got Sora versus Nathan Drake.
I don't know, man. This one I don't know. This one I got nothing, because you know Sora more. I'm going to defer to you for Sora versus Nathan Drake.
I mean, I'm going Nathan Drake. I enjoy Nathan Drake's character more than Sora. I think I like the writing and the character and the comedy of Nathan Drake and like the quips. And I think in terms of iconically PlayStation, Nathan Drake brings a lot to it, but also like there's just a lot to the character as well. I think I'm not gonna say more of a character, because Sora does have a lot to the character as well. But what Sora has as a character is more so about like lore and like who that character is and what like that character means to that world versus Sora's personality. Like Sora's personality is just like Sora's a kid, right? Sora's a kid with big old feet, like that. Like that's his thing. Versus Nathan, am I wrong? And a keyblade, and a big old blade shaped like a key.
Who's hanging out and like lying to people. Like,
but I think there is, when you're talking about, I think how the character presents, there is more. I would have a whole conversation with Nathan Drake about the world and about what it's like being a thief. Talking to Sora, I'm like, hey man, you want some ice cream or some shit? I don't know.
Different bracket that I would also love to do. Like, who do you want to drink with?
Yeah,
more?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and like the winner of that bracket is Victor Sullivan.
Victor Sullivan.
Yeah, definitely. And I would probably rather get a drink with Sora than Nathan Drake. I feel like I've had drinks with Nathan Drake and they didn't go well. So,
So who's your pick?
I'll just defer to you, and we're going to go with Nathan Drake, just because, again, I don't really have like a big history with Sora like that. And I think Kingdom Hearts as a whole is very up and down narratively, it seems. That's the vibe I get. So sure.
Next matchup is Ellie versus Cloud.
Ellie.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say, I think we're in the same wavelength here that we love Ellie. Like, Cloud, of course, is definitely up there, and this is another one that I think could be the finals on any PlayStation podcast. But I think
I'm just glad I got Cloud this far. That's where I'm at.
You got Cloud this far.
Yeah, me.
That's what I saw.
Yeah,
single-handedly, Barrett. But yeah, like I'm with you, and I'm sure we'll have more conversations about Ellie as we go.
If Cloud's gonna lose to anybody, it's Ellie. I know
that we're just like walking Ellie through like very unceremoniously.
We'll have those arguments. Yeah, like we are 2.5 hours into this, and trust me, the next matchup we'll have a conversation, because the next one is Miles Morales versus Kratos.
And like part of that is Kratos just has had more time to brew. We don't really know what they're doing with Miles yet, and I think that ends up hurting Miles in this bracket. And I think like in terms of, it's tough because like in terms of dynamics, I don't think Miles like has quite as much as Kratos. I think Kratos is also just like more figured out, because he's more figured out as a character. Like he has, he's older. He has like kind of a much bigger history. Miles is, literally and figuratively a kid figuring it out and trying to learn what his conflicts may or may not be, and they're still very like, it's just it's It's Kratos.
I think the thing is, for every metric that we've established on this 2.5-hour long podcast so far, Miles Morales doesn't win any of them against Kratos specifically. Like the Miles Morales that we have in Marvel's Spider-Man universe doesn't stand up to Kratos in any of the metrics in terms of icon, in terms of character development, in terms of like, you know, like being an interesting character, in terms of all these things, right? Like I don't think Miles Morales can stand up to
the
Kratos
only argument I would make for Miles is that I think they figured out quicker what to do with him as a character that's more interesting than Kratos. Like Kratos, it took a while for them to be like, all right, what makes him a good and interesting character?
I mean, if Miles Morales had a game in 2002, I'm sure he would go through the same like arc.
But like that's not what happened. We're talking about what happened. And I think with Miles' very first game, I thought they did a really good job for his very first game to nail like what makes him special as Spider-Man. And again, that's only the only aspect I would argue for Miles here. And yeah, I would say every other aspect goes to Kratos.
Next up, we have Victor Sullivan versus Astrobot.
Oh
Listen.
man, I hate to see this so bad. Like Astrobot. Like I love Astrobot a lot. Maybe I just love him too much. I love both these characters a lot. They're both fantastic. I want beers with both of them. But Astrobot, I think, is just like so iconic and personable. And again, it's so wide. I think the amount of personality they get out of Astro, despite Astro not saying anything or doing anything of consequence, right? It's like, oh, his main game, what's the whole story? Oh, you're just saving little other robots and that's it. But like, there's so much joy and life in those animation, those big old baby eyes. I'm going Astro.
Janet, we align on this. I am also going Astrobot.
Yes!
And it hurts me to do this to my boy Victor Sullivan, but I think in terms of the modern PlayStation mascot, Astrobot has brought the stuff. Astrobot has done everything right. Astrobot is lovable. Astrobot, Astro's Playroom, I think is like done a lot in terms of that franchise now being synonymous with PlayStation, and every PlayStation 5 having Astro's Playroom in it introduces everybody to Astrobot in a way where if you're a PlayStation fan, you know who that is. And doing that while also using Astrobot as a gateway into all these other PlayStation franchises of the history through Astrobot or Astro's Playroom, I think has done a lot in terms of cementing, hey, like you can inject any sort of personality in Astrobot and it works, but then also like, you know, that the art style and like, I guess like the energy that Astrobot brings is very, it's natural and it's easy for people to get into, right? Like when I see Astrobot doing the Carlton dance while wearing like a Cloud Strife wig, I'm like, hell yeah, let's fucking go. When I see Astrobot decked out in like Ellie's outfit, I'm like, oh, let's go. Like I love that guy. And they've done such a good job making Astrobot synonymous with PlayStation. And so I got to go with my boy Astrobot. Yep. Next up, oh my God. Next up, we have Atreus versus Joel Miller from The Last of Us.
Joel. It's not even a question. I can go into detail if I need to, but
nah, I'm going Joel too. Next up, we have Abby versus Peter Parker.
Abby.
I'm going Peter Parker.
Oh yeah.
What? Oh man. Okay, nah, I ain't gonna let my girl go down like this. Okay. So I mean, there's so much to say here, right? Okay, Abby, introduced in Last of Us 2. I think Abby is such a more dynamic character than Peter. And part of that you can argue is like Peter obviously has to kind of, to a degree, be a certain way because he has other IP attachments. Like you are telling your own story with Peter and Marvel Spider-Man PS4, but Peter's still Peter and he's like naive and kind and all these other things. Like he's a very familiar character. And I think they do him well in this game. However, like Abby has so much more going on with motivations and interpersonal dynamics with characters. And I think the fact that she's both loved and hated at the same time from fan bases speaks to how dynamic and interesting her character is. I think we've seen her be brutal and murderous. We've seen her show mercy. We've seen her have I've seen she's run the spectrum of human emotions to such a wider and deeper degree than Peter ever has, and I think Peter may ever will, frankly. Ooh. So that's my argument for Abby.
My argument for Peter Parker is I'm going to echo a little bit what I said before in terms of Peter Parker being there throughout just the history of PlayStation, starting from the PS1 and having both like the quality and popularity there, right? Like when I bring up the Spider-Man Neversoft games, people know what that is, and people identify with that, and they have big memories of that because that Spider-Man game meant a lot to a lot of people. Jumping into the next generation, right? Spider-Man 2 meant so much to the PS2, right? Coming off of things like GTA 3 and stepping into the open world and having it be a thing of now you can actually be Spider-Man. Now you can actually swing through.
Peter Parker, though.
I mean, it's all the same. It's all Peter Parker. I think that works as Peter Parker.
I get what you're saying here.
All of those games, and I'm gonna get to PS4 Peter Parker in a second, but I'm counting it as the same Peter Parker. I think, and I do think all these Spider-Man games do have specific PlayStation lineage to them, which makes it work as well. But like that game is a lot to PS2, and then like I made my argument before for PS3. Jumping into PS4. Spider-Man has only been a thing that has grown bigger and bigger and gotten better and better with the generations of PlayStation. And PS4 is kind of so far has been the peak of that, right? With Spider-Man and PS4. What's up, Janet?
It can all be. I think you're leaning very heavy on like iconography and history and evolution. Like, is this one of the best iterations of this character? Yes. Does that mean he's a better character than Abby? I would argue very strongly no. And I also would argue, people in the chat, please come on. Y'all got to come through for me. It's best character. Like, Abby is one of like the best characters, period. Like,
I guess
on this board anywhere.
I love
Peter,
Abby.
Who's Pete? What's Peter got going for him? Like, really, when you bring
I really loved Peter.
But Abby's so much better written, like layers.
I get the kind of wanting to push Peter aside because Spider-Man has been a character in just popular media for years and years and years. I would say that like I think this version of Peter is better than most of the modern iterations we've gotten of him. I think just like him not being as complex as I would disagree with that. I think he's a very complex character, and I think his relationships and his struggles between who he wants to be as a superhero, but who he wants to be as a person, and how that constantly gets intertwined. I think that makes him a very complicated. Makes him go through a very complicated struggle, and yes, not as like much of like almost like an allegory of like what Abby's story goes through in The Last of Us Part 2. But I think there is still something there that makes an argument for Peter.
To finish, I never got to finish my Peter Parker argument. So to jump back in, to get into PS4 and make my argument for that Spider-Man, I do think this is the best iteration of Spider-Man in a video game. And I think it goes beyond like the depth of Abby, because I agree with you, Janet, that Abby as a character, I think has a lot of weight that goes into making her character work and making the moments that hit for that character really hit in terms of her relationship with Lev, in terms of, the back and forth with Joel and Ellie, and how that reinforces the themes of that game. I think you're right in terms of the detail that goes into the details and the nuance that goes into writing a character like Abby. The thing I will say about Peter Parker is I don't think depth is the end all be all for what makes a good character a good character. I think the thing that works about Peter Parker is that this iteration of Peter Parker is very good at being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that we know and love. And the way that they nail the themes and then they nail the things about Peter Parker that makes him Peter Parker, I think are super good and super powerful, especially his relationship with Doc Ock. And like, I don't want to necessarily spoil Spider-Man because we can try to still steer clear, but the way in which that relationship evolves, the way in which his relationship with the city evolves, and we're jumping into the Spider-Man being a Spider-Man that's already established as Spider-Man. I think we jump into that in a place that is one, smart, because we know who this is. We already know we have history with this character. We've all played a Spider-Man video game before, and jumping into a Spider-Man game where it is Peter Parker, beginning that baton pass to a Miles Morales and having to understand like, oh shit, okay, like not only am I now like dealing with my own shit and like dealing with the stereotypical Peter Parker shit of my personal life getting in the way of my superhero life and vice versa, and what that means for his relationships with Doc Ock and Aunt May and the characters that are Mary Jane and the characters that are all around him, that we can dive into detail if we want to spoil things, but I'm going to leave that unless you want to really spoil that shit. Right. Not only in the ways that you had to deal with that, but in ways that set up like now this is a Peter Parker that toward the end of the game has to grapple with, oh shit, like Miles is like this kid that I've met who, is from the like, quote unquote friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, right? Is from the neighborhoods that I protect, now is going to be filtered into this role that I've had, and now I have to take on this role. I think the way in which they tackle that in Spider-Man PS4 going into Miles Morales is good and powerful, and yeah, like I think Peter Parker as a character within the game and even like just within like the legacy of PlayStation, I just think for me I put above Abby, even though Abby is a fantastic character. And it looks like, looking at the
You're
straw
not
poll,
alone.
Peter
You're not
Parker
alone.
Peter Parker does pull away with it. 61% Peter Parker wins against Abby. I do love your argument for Abby because I think you pushed the lever for me,
I fought
Janet,
as
in
much as I
terms of
could.
how much more of a battle it is than like I would have
Yeah.
considered.
Thank you for mentioning Lev. I totally forgot to even mention that. But again, like, I guess it's not spoilers. It doesn't mean anything if you haven't played the game. But
you can say names of characters aren't spoilers.
Peter is more iconic, I think, especially when you think of, and there's a lot of fantastic characters in The Last of Us, Abby being one of many, but I think even among the rest of the cast, she loses the iconic battle by a good margin, just given history, but okay.
Next up, we have Aloy versus Daxter. I mean,
I feel like you kind of got to go with Aloy in terms of, like, I think for me, and maybe this is just like recency bias, but I think it's even putting like the nuance of the characters aside. I think Aloy like has more going on. I know you just mentioned like for your argument with Peter, but again, it's an argument I disagree with, that depth isn't everything, which I don't think depth is everything, but I think depth is a lot. And I think Aloy has just way more depth and layers than Daxter does. And again, this is another issue where like Daxter's at an inherent disadvantage because he's usually not the protagonist. And even when he was, like, what did he do with that personality-wise? He's still the same guy. And it's a very lovable character. And again, I think the animations and like the little in the details, like they got so much personality out of what is a pretty, straightforward character otherwise. But I don't think that's quite enough to overpower Aloy and everything that she has going on and the pain and the arc and the things that she's going through.
That brings us to the next round, round 4. The remaining contestants are Lara Croft, Nathan Drake, Ellie, Kratos, Astrobot, Joel Miller, Peter Parker, and Aloy, which is a banger list of contestants. Let's get back to deciding the winner of the circle bracket.
I should have let Nathan Drake die when I had the chance.
It's Lara Croft versus Nathan Drake.
Wow. We didn't even plan this battle.
Yeah, no, this is it. I'm
really uncomfortable with the energy we create in the studio today with this Lara Croft versus Nathan Drake.
It has to happen. It's inevitable. It's like there being a tower in BioShock and shit. It's like there always has to be one. Nathan Drake versus Lara Croft. I'm going Nathan Drake. Quick and easy.
I feel like I don't know. I'm not comfortable. I think I've played way more from Uncharted than from Lara Croft series, surprisingly enough, even though I feel like I should go the other direction at this point. I think I kind of got to go with that too, just from like, I don't know. I don't feel anything. I'm gonna let other people. I don't know. I have no feelings. I have.
Sorry, are you gonna let me pick Nathan Drake here? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know. I feel like I'm damned either way here. I don't like the situation. Oh man. I'm going to have to just let you pick Nathan Drake because I also think I know more. Like when I have to describe Nathan Drake's personality, I have a way to quickly describe it. It may not be a very like agreed upon way, but I think he does have like certain notes that he consistently hits. And there's like a vibe there. Granted, it does get more nuanced as you go later on. I'm still partway through Uncharted 4, but yeah. Nathan it's also way more of a story. It's more of like a story driven, like, not that Tomb Raider doesn't have story in it, but I think that's part of why people love it. It's also part of why I don't love that game as much because I don't think it's as groundbreaking.
Yeah, I thought this was gonna be. I would have assumed that you're gonna pick Lara Croft off the bat, and I would have loved to have a conversation. Like I think when I think of Uncharted versus Tomb Raider, which I know isn't as much of the conversation as between the characters, but Uncharted I do prefer for the story and what the world brings. But like Tomb Raider, at least the modern Tomb Raider game specifically, I think gameplay wise, I prefer those over Uncharted just for how much more they focus on exploration and like
I think I probably would too. Like I'm pretty early into some of those newer games, but I definitely I liked those games probably more.
Yeah, in terms of character, in terms of character, I never got super into those games. Like I think there's cool things here and there in terms of what they do for the characters in Tomb Raider, but like beyond Lara Croft, like none of the other characters really stuck with me, and then even Lara Croft herself, like I think it being more of a serious dramatic story than Uncharted felt very upbeat and pulpy. being more that, they had more to achieve, and I don't think they achieved that to the fullest extent. Whereas Uncharted succeeded in being the fun, pulpy adventure. And
I think that's a really good point. Again, I don't have as much of enough of a background of Tomb Raider to fight for Laura in that level, but I do think that they probably got more juice out of the orange than Tomb Raider did in that sense.
Next up is Ellie versus Kratos.
Man. All right, I'm gonna have to go Ellie. I think we're sensing a theme here, and it's that I love The Last of Us. And I'm not gonna hide that. That is just a true fact. But a big part of why I love that is the characters and the writing. Though the gameplay is also phenomenal. It's a fucking great franchise. But yeah, I think I'm going to Ellie. I think, specifically for Last of Us 2 and her role there, and seeing, God, they both have such like tragic and nuanced narratives in ways, but I think you see so many more shades of Ellie in The Last of Us 2 that I really grew to appreciate. A lot of people grew to hate Ellie in The Last of Us 2, and I think that's a testament for them being willing to take her places that few studios would be willing to take, and not that you need to make an unlikable character. Because I saw people in the chat being like, "Oh, if you just kill a bunch of people, suddenly you're a good character." It's not just that, because there's plenty of characters that are murderous and vengeful and all that. It's in how you portray it.
I mean, Kratos, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. That is why the reason that all of us have agreed that Kratos really started to shine in 2018 is not because he became suddenly way more murderous or way less murderous. It's that there was so much more to dig into in that story that they were delivering in that character.
What drives him? What are his his regrets with those things in the past? All that stuff.
Yeah. My pick is Kratos, and I've already put the straw poll in chat, so people are already voting.
I saw you put the poll. I was talking, and I was like, "God damn it, Blessing!"
Yeah, like I think this is the toughest matchup. Well, one of the toughest matchups so far that we've gotten, and I could see it going either way. Like, I want to say Ellie, but I think deep down for me it is Kratos, and I think part of it is I didn't 100% love where they went with Ellie in Last of Us Part 2, right? Like I saw the vision and I liked a lot of the vision, and there are so many things I love about that game. But one of the things I took away from that game was that, like, hey, like, story-wise, like I love the commentary on violence. I like the twist and what they're going for there, but I do think that some of those choices did some of the characters a disservice. And the whole time of during the whole Ellie portion of that game, there were plenty of moments where I was just like, I don't necessarily believe this from you anymore. Like, I get where they're going with it, and the anger and the rage that is supposed to be depicted through Ellie in those moments. But I think we all have those moments where we're watching TV or watching a movie or playing a game where we're like, I wouldn't do that. I don't think that isn't what I would do with that character. Or, like, I don't understand why this character is making this decision. And I think I had that one too many times with Ellie, where I was like, I understand the vision of where they're going with this character, but I think they pushed it a bit too far. That brought it back around to some levels of distaste for me.
People already cast their votes, but I still just want to say my words.
Keep going.
I think for me,
there's still people left to vote.
As far as that sentiment goes, and again, we're kind of like skirting around some of like the larger plot points, right? Just for people who maybe haven't played yet for some reason, but go play it. It's awesome. I like that they did that, because it's, again, they were down to push it. I get that you're saying they pushed it too far and it kind of went to the point of frustration, but I think what I like about where they took Ellie is that they took us to a dark place of pain and they made us just look at it. And I think that it was done in a purposeful way. And I think it is like a genuine and relatable and common thing. We've seen this kind of trope across media all the time. I mean, again, this is light spoilers for Breaking Bad and like that arc, but like there's been so many stories where it's like, why are you still doing this? Like, who is this really for?
Yeah.
And like, why are you doing that? And you just want to, and you're like, I can't stand watching you tear your life apart. But I think the way they examined that darkness of that layer of humanity was so beautifully done. And I think again, not spoiling, but the ending of the game, the tone it lands on is so damn good, and it's part because of like where you are with Ellie at that point, and it gives so much more weight and meaning to the story. I do think that a lot of people were pissed off because they're like, oh man, like not saying that this is you, but a lot of people were like, man, Ellie was so cool and like I loved her as a kid, and now she's like, kind of
different, and like she's right,
but like that doesn't mean that she's not like a well-written character. It just means that maybe she's not that likable. But I felt that way about Joel from like the first game, and other people didn't have that read. Like we all have different reads on what we maybe like or don't like, or who we think are good people.
Yeah,
but I think that exploration was really well done, and that's what makes her a great character.
And that's my thing is, I think the journey of The Last of Us Part 2 is a fantastic, well done, artfully done thing that like I'm 100% with you. I think for me it is where they land with that story and those characters is. I come out on a place where I'm like, I see what you did here, and I appreciate and respect this journey with you, but I don't necessarily agree with the final takeaways of this story. Like, I don't know if I align in this thought process, but I respect you for having this thought process, right? It's like the thing of, I forget who made the quote, but it's like, you know, I don't like the music that he's making, but the fact that he's making it, I respect that. Like, it's that sort of thing for me, where I'm like, I see what you're doing here, and like you fucking knocked it out of the park with the effort and the quality in which you did this thing, but the final result isn't necessarily my jam.
Also, very, very last thing, because I know I got to move on. But I think the fact that they took Ellie from a side character to a main character and like fleshed her out in such a deep way is also highly impressive. Like if Atreus could have, not that you need to have that kind of like net story you're telling. I'm not saying they should tell the same story, but he would be free. That'd be a dream world if he could have that kind of deep and iconic of a role as what Ellie had in The Last of Us 2. And even The Last of Us 1, she had like a big run. I know she had like the DLC and all that. I'm not saying this is her first time taking the main stage, but to take her from a companion character to like, this is her show, and it was a damn good show, I think also just is a testament to what a great character she is. She's done it all, you know, but that's okay. Y'all don't. It didn't go the way that I wanted to, but that's okay.
Spoilers for what the result is. Poll in the poll, Kratos has taken it with a very close poll. Once again, it is 56% to 43%. Kratos does move on. That brings us to the other side of the finals of the triangle bracket. It is Joel Miller versus Astrobot.
Joel.
I really want to troll. I really want to be the guy.
I want you to go Astro so bad.
For Joel.
Let's just do it. Just do it.
I really wanted to
fighting for Joel. Like I hate it.
Listen,
here.
in an episode where it was us fucking around, and it was like in an episode where Greg was here and we were making the fight for Parasite Eve, right? I would put my feet up and I'd start trolling. But I feel like we've taken it seriously enough thus far that I should continue with the serious energy and go. Yeah. The answer is Joel from The Last of Us. Joel is better than Astrobot.
Yeah, and again, like where they kind of end with him is so good.
Yeah.
Too.
Again, on a different episode, I would have gone all out and I would have made my argument, but we're deep into this and we put a lot of effort into this. I'm not fucking this up, chat.
Honestly, once Astrobot just started killing people for no reason, he fell off for me. No, anyway.
Damn. Next up, we got Peter Parker versus Aloy. I'm going Peter Parker once again.
I mean, I haven't finished Horizon yet, but I kind of want to go Aloy. To be honest, I'm gonna go Aloy. So put in the chat.
We're putting the poll in the chat. Wait, so bring me back to, did you not enjoy Peter Parker in Spider-Man?
No, I liked it. Like... I think I cried when I played that game, actually, because I was so moved by the story. But this is not the story. This is the character. This is the character of Peter Parker. And I think it was
the character was awesome.
Yeah, there's so many great again, not to get super into it, but like when they have this breakthrough moment of like the science stuff that they're working on, and like I just played that moment over the weekend, and like the music swelling up, and it's this like successful moment where they like kind of cracked like this thing that they've been working on, and like the relationship that Peter has with that character that he's working with, and just like knowing where it's gonna go. It's so beautiful. The acting, the performances, I think are great. And you know, I was too scared to say it earlier, but I'm gonna say it now. Like I think this version of Peter Parker is better than any of the live action version to Peter Parker. I think Yuri Lowenthal is fucking fantastic, and I just and
I think this also not to talk, because I think Peter Parker makes us think about Peter Parker, but also the Spider-Man half of it I think is really good as well. You know, like there are plenty of bits and plenty of fun moments of writing where I think they really shine in terms of the goofiness and the like, you know, like the I'm in controlness of Spider-Man, or at least I'm trying to be in control, and I'm kind of speaking into existence by like, you know, having these clips and being cool and being funny. You know, like the Spider Cop bit toward the beginning of Spider-Man 20. Was it 2018?
Yeah,
Spider-Man PS4.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny. My mind calendar. I'm like, where are we in time?
Yeah, like I always thought that bit was funny, and like even the hologram stuff in Miles Morales. Where
he's like kind of like the trainer guy. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh,
like I think there is a level of just friendliness and relatability and like funness and comedy to Peter Parker.
Would you say he's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man?
I would say he's my friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Like Aloy, I think is a character that has still a lot of potential to grow as a character. Like I really liked Aloy in Horizon Zero Dawn, but I don't think Aloy is necessarily I don't think Horizon Zero Dawn Aloy is going to be the peak Aloy yet, right? Like I think the writing there reminds me a lot of. Actually, I don't even have a good example. I think the thing that I loved about the writing in Horizon Zero Dawn was more about the world. And when it comes to Aloy, I think there are things around Aloy's character that are interesting, but her character herself, I don't think was as dynamic and as interesting or made the choices of a Peter Parker, right? I think her character was cool.
You do, and I still have not finished Horizon yet, so maybe, it's been a while since I played, because I played Marvel's Spider-Man PS4 when it first came out, so it's also been a while, but I do remember loving that story. I think one thing that Peter has going for him is that you just get through, by nature of the kind of story they're telling, you get so much more insights into every layer of who Peter Parker / Spider-Man is. You know, whether it's like his personal role, whether it's his profession, his job, his role at the what is it? His aunt's is it shelter or whatever?
Yeah, the shelter.
Yo, this dude's hustling, man. He's busy. He's booked and busy. This man is like,
or even like in the DLC stuff, right? Like the DLC stuff, I didn't love as much, but I do think the back and forth between him and Black Cat of like. Again, like light spoilers. You don't care at this point if you've not played it.
I mean, like if you've read any Spider-Man comic book, like yes, they have an implied relationship. Yes,
and like the idea of like, oh shit, like do I have a kid? Like those elements of the Spider-Man story in the Spider-Man PS4 game specifically, I think add a lot of personality and add a lot of fun things for that character to do in those games. And it looks like the chat agrees because Peter Parker wins with 52% of the vote. And moves on. That brings us to our final four being Nathan Drake, Kratos, Joel Miller, and Peter Parker. Let's start off with Nathan Drake versus Kratos. Kratos. Easy. Kratos is in the finals.
Honestly, Nathan, you're lucky you got this far. I'm just like, to be honest.
Next up.
Wow.
Joel versus Peter Parker.
Joel
versus Peter Parker.
Again, I don't hate Peter Parker.
Here's the thing, right? Is what this bracket is it indicative that we just love video game dads? Is that our thing right now?
I wasn't trying to make that bracket, but y'all ain't come through for me with Abby. Y'all ain't came through for me with Ellie, and now we just out here with this is what y'all brought us to. It ain't where I wanted us to go, but this is where we are. You know, I would not describe myself that way, but that's how I fought for all these. Other than Lara Croft, I let her. Let her hang out to dry. But
I'm trying to gather all the power to make the argument for Peter Parker, and I don't have it. The answer is Joel. Like, it's Joel. Like, I love Joel. I like that.
So it's gonna be like a dad to dad fight.
It's gonna be a dad versus dad finals here because I think
really good characters. Like, I'm not trying to. I'm being a little cheeky with the like. Oh, I don't like video game dads.
You've committed to Joel from Last Was here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that does bring us to the finals, which is Kratos versus Joel from The Last of Us.
Actually, I should have made you pick first because I have a bad feeling you're just gonna pick the opposite, and then it's just gonna be hell.
No, I wouldn't be. Listen. I'm actually not into doing no, not that I'm not into doing the straw polls. I use straw polls as like the final, like the last, effort, because I like the conversation. I like the back and forth. I like the arguments. I think this is where the show shines. I love you too, chat, but we'll get there if we get there. But go for it. I mean, honestly, I have to think about this for a second. I don't really have a go-to answer here.
I'm going Joel. There's no question in my mind. And again, you can argue it's because I'm a Last of Us stan, but I would argue I'm a Last of Us stan because I think the writing and the characters are really good. So this kind of just plays to that background for me. But talking about Joel as a character, I think Joel really ran the gambit on so many different feelings, and I think that's what I really liked about his character arc. Going again, some very light, some spoilers, right, for Last of Us 1 and 2, just so y'all know. I think that's okay at this point. It's been out for a while. Playing in the Last of Us 1, it's like he runs the gambit, right? We're here, he's bringing Ellie through. He doesn't want to do it. He's like begrudging guardian. He's kind of an ass. At one point, she veers off. He has to go back and get her. He goes through all this drama. He grows attached. You see a bit more of his humanity. I think also so much of Joel is colored in loss, like from the get-go of him losing his daughter at the beginning of the game and having that distance. But then he also has like these, you see these hints, these windows into like, this guy's more than just, an asshole who's out here doing jobs. Like, we know he cares for other people. We've seen him occur other losses. We've seen friendships that he hasn't connected with in a while. And you kind of slowly get these windows into who he is. I really like that reveal where we slowly get to know who Joel is beyond the gruff exterior.
Beyond.
All culminating to what for many. Oh, should I not like say the ending?
No, we just said beyond.
Okay, yes. All culminating to like what is either an act of love or an act of betrayal, depending on how you want to read it. I love that you can read it two ways. For me, I got to the end of Last of Us 1 and I was like, damn, Joel's a piece of shit. What a horrible fucking person. What a selfish prick. Other people were like, no, it's beautiful. Like, he loves this girl and, you know, I would do the same. And if you had a daughter, you'd know, and all this stuff. But I like that it speaks to both of those, and I can see both of those. And the reason I can see both of those is because they wrote it and they sold it to me masterfully. And it's heartbreaking either way. I think even if you do, whether you agree or disagree with Joel's decision, there's a part of you that has to wince at it happening because it sucks. It's a bad situation with no good answers, like many elements of this bracket have been. Continuing on, right? Last of Us 2. So then, you know, when you lose Joel near the beginning, again, it's gonna have to be spoilery because it kind of has to be. You know, for a lot of people, that was a lot more heavily weighted than it was for me because I'm like, well, Joel was kind of shitty and now he's gone and that sucks. You know, that still feels something. But then you see these windows into who he was with Ellie, and you really start to like empathize and sympathize, and then you think about what Joel means to Ellie and how that changes how she acts and how that informs everything. And when he gets, but again, I'm not going to totally spoil the end of Last of Us 2 just because it is newer. But when you get toward the end, those asking like, why did Ellie do what she did? When you get to the end, if you don't know the answer, like, what? Like, did we not watch the same scene? I mean, it was so heartbreaking, and it made Joel like so fleshed out because I've hated him, I've loved him. It was such a beautifully complicated parental relationship, and I'm just so moved by it. Like, I'm not a Joel stan. Like, a lot of people stan Joel, and that's why they don't like Last of Us 2. I'll say it because it's what I see. Some people don't like it because they have actual reasons, but some of y'all don't like it because, like, oh, I didn't like that Joel died. I love that they did that. I saw more of his character. The freaking space scene, the museum scene, best scene in a game that I've ever experienced. Point blank, period. And it's because of Joel. Boom, Joel.
Congratulations, Joel Miller. You have won
Whoa!
the PlayStation's best character bracket. What?
You're not going to say anything?
I mean,
you made the argument. What else do you want me to say?
Blessing over. That's.
Well, no, I was okay. On Joel's side. I was gonna go Joel too, but I do appreciate the like. I mean, if you do want me to state my case, we're late, and so we need to wrap up. But if you want me to state my case, right? Like, I think the journey I was going through in my head of figuring out like Joel versus Kratos was trying to think of the moments that mean the most to me from these characters. And when I think of Joel, I am thinking of the space museum scene, which means I think a lot to me in terms of that character. And I'm thinking of the end of Last of Us part 1, where he does make that choice that has big ramifications. And even though like the early parts of Last of Us Part 2 mean what or unfold the way they unfold, right? That I think one helped it so that like for me and how I felt about those characters later on, it didn't necessarily taint Joel. Like Last of Us Part 2 didn't end up tainting Joel in the way that it brought me a little bit down on Ellie and even like on other characters in the game. Joel spent Last of Us Part 2, I think, being the best of Joel, and after he was gone, right? Like whenever we would revisit Joel in Last of Us Part 2, we got the best of Joel. And I think the moments wherever Joel is present, those moments really hit for me in a way that I think just goes so deep, right? When I think of Kratos and the moments that mean to me a lot to me in Kratos, I think of him having those moments of being a father and him parenting in ways that are stern but somewhat caring because it's Kratos. But then I also think of the certain scene where it is him having to go back and acquire a certain item, and him having the trip and how that trip unfolds, and him going into his house and him grabbing the item and him doing the ritual of like taking on this thing because he has to do a thing for a person that he loves. I think that scene is a scene that is going to stick with me forever when I think about video game moments that are fucking fire, right? Like Kratos having that scene. And I think it is fitting, even though it is, I think, stereotypical, like an easy pick, whatever, for these two characters to be in the finals. I think there's a reason why these two characters are in the finals, and I think that is because we can identify moments with these characters that sit so well and so deeply with us and how we connect to these games. But I think all in all, I do have to pick Joel Miller, and I think part of that comes from having a longer time for Joel to sit as being the amazing character that he is versus Kratos only recently in this latest game being finally ascending to this form. And I think I've had more moments that I can think of with Joel, and more, I think, like moments that sit better with me with Joel than with Kratos and the overall like story moments in those games. And so that's why I go with Joel Miller for champion here. So congratulations, Joel. You'll get your trophy in the mail. This has been one of the longest episodes of P.S. I Love You of this iteration of the show. And so I hope you guys enjoyed it. 3 hours worth of content.
Blessing. Just fill in time. We've got 50 seconds left until we hit 3 hours exactly. Let's go.
We really? Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, as I fill in time, right? Janet, where can people find your work?
You can find me across the internet under the handle Game Onysus. That's Game ONYSUS, especially on Twitch. Again, same handle. Where I've been streaming a lot of PlayStation stuff lately. I was able to stream some Horizon Zero Dawn, so if you want to see what my thoughts are, or where I'm at, or what I'm thinking, and give your thoughts, that's a good place to jump in and do that. And I've also been playing a bit of the PS Now library and jumping around and just literally playing anything anyone writes in chat, which has been fun.
Hell yeah. I remember hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode currently is Horizon Zero Dawn, so get those in. Remember, this has been PS I Love You, XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week we get together and talk about the hottest topics in PlayStation. Want to know what's fun? Right after this, I'm going to jump in to MCU and review The Amazing Spider-Man 2 with Tim, Nick, and Anthony Carboni. And so I'm going to have like another 3-hour podcast, right?
You and me both, Bless. You and me both.
Coming right off of KFGD. It's nonstop for me today, baby. But again, that's been the show. We have a Patreon. Actually, we don't have a Patreon post show this week because I do have to jump into this next thing. And so thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.